Warrior Lore. Chapter 2159. Xiao originally thought that Xiao Hua would refuse. Who knew that Xiao Hua would take it without hesitation and scan it with his divine sense? Nonsense, didn't he come to Blood Red Island just to get Xiao storage pouch? In order to gather all the demonic tools, Xiao Hua almost lost his life. Hee, Senior Xiao is really frank. Xiao didn't know what Xiao Hua was thinking and secretly praised him in her heart. Sure enough, one of the storage pouches contained many demonic tools. One of them was the demonic spear shaft that Xiao Hua wanted. The cracks and broken parts were very similar to the ones in the space. Moreover, the small demonic hammer that Xiao used before was also among them. It seemed that Xiao really took out all the things. What is this? Xiao Hua naturally couldn't show his attention and looked at the other storage pouch. The storage pouch was full of miscellaneous items. One of them was an ox head token. It was also mottled with rust and was very similar to the tiger head token in the space. After thinking for a moment, Xiao Hua took out the token and asked, Xiao, what is this token? This. I also don't know. Seeing Xiao Hua directly call her Xiao was very happy. She glanced at Qua rhyming and said, this thing was picked up by Martial Uncle in the early years when I was doing a foundation establishment trial on the Sea of Kuei. There were two of them. One seemed to be a pig's head. I really don't remember. So Martial Uncle casually gave me this ox head token. Which Martial Uncle? Xiao Hua said with a smile. If possible, can you also give his token to me? Oh, it's Martial Uncle Yu. Xiao answered without hesitation, but she was a bit embarrassed. I will ask Martial Uncle Qua, but that thing is many years old. I don't know if Martial Uncle still has it. Moreover, who knows if he wants to exchange it with Senior Xiao? Xiao Hua said with a smile. You can go and ask, see what conditions he has. Okay. Xiao readily agreed and pointed her finger. Senior Xiao, the things in this storage bag are all strange things that Brother Ming and I obtained in the Qianhe Sea. We don't know their uses. Even if you ask me, I don't know. As expected, it's really strange. There's actually a small finger bone here. Xiao Hua smiled and put down the storage pouch. Then, he looked at the other storage pouches. They were filled with sea beasts' inner cores, bones, and other things. There were even some spirit herbs from the sea. Thus, Xiao Hua pointed at the storage pouch that contained devil tools and asked, Devil tools are extremely rare in the Dawnrain continent. Why do you have so many of them on Bloodshine Island? I'll teach Senior Xiao well. Xiao laughed and said, Seniors all cultivate Dharma spells, and this demonic artifact is extremely heavy. Without a body-tempering cultivation technique, who would use it? My Blood Ray Island uses the body-refining technique as its foundation. Naturally, we need a lot of demonic artifacts. Many cultivators who obtained demonic artifacts would bring them to the Sea City to trade with my Blood Ray Island. Looking at the storage pouch, Xiao was somewhat reluctant to part with it and said, Since young, I've been fond of refining tools. I've dabbled in demonic artifacts. Among them, there's a mysterious demonic artifact. In my opinion, it should be the famous weapon in the demon realm, Lu. However, I only have a small part of it, so I can't make a complete judgment. Then, a trace of regret appeared on her face. When I went to Haoming City this time, I encountered another spear end. Unfortunately, it was snatched by another cultivator. It's really hateful. Oh, Lu? Xiao Hua was obviously stunned. This name was definitely unfamiliar to him before he came to the Qianhe Sea. But just now, when heavenly demon sects Zhang Qingxiao wanted to escape from the 10,000 Demon Realms Empress, she made up a lie. Wasn't it to find this Lu? Could it be that it was this item? Is this it? There were many demonic artifacts in the storage pouch. However, only this spear shaft was left with a damaged section. Yes, Senior Zhao's eyes are indeed as sharp as torches. Xiao praised. Xiao Hua originally wanted to take another demonic artifact first, and then pretend to take this damaged one as well. It could be said that he couldn't refuse, but reluctantly took it. Since Xiao sincerely gave it to him, Xiao Hua didn't pretend and smiled. Since Xiao is so sincere, I'll accept it. Following which, Xiao Hua took some of the spiritual herbs from the sea, as well as the storage pouch that was filled with strange things. He then passed the remaining items to Kwa Chiaoer. Senior. Kwa Rhyming was a little anxious and said, "What you took are all useless things. These are the ones that are really useful." Xiao Hua pursed his lips and smiled. With a profound expression, he looked at the two with bright eyes. Chiaoer and Chiaoer's brother Ming. Actually, what I take or don't take, isn't it your goodwill? I didn't save the two of you for your things. So what's the difference between taking more and taking less? Of course, I saw that Chiaoer had deep feelings for her brother Ming. Even if she didn't want her own life, she would still die with her brother Ming. This kind of deep affection, even the heavens and earth would be convinced. Why can't I take action? Although these things aren't of much use to me, I hope that the two of you can peacefully dual cultivate in the future and reach the gold core realm. Senior. Kwa Rhyming's eyes were filled with tears. Kwa Chiaoer was grateful. They really didn't expect the person in front of them to be so noble. Senior, please wait a moment. I'll go find Martial Uncle. I'll definitely find the things that Senior wants. Kwa Chiaoer left without saying anything. Hee, Chiaoer, don't be anxious. Xiao Hua stopped her and said, "It's already late. Let's talk about it tomorrow. I'll also stay here for a while." Okay. Kwa Chiaoer was very obedient and asked again, "Other than that thing, what else is Senior Xiao looking for in Kwa He? Junior wants to see what effect it has?" So it's like that. Xiao Hua thought for a moment and said, "If there are any special spirit herbs in Kwa He, it doesn't matter what kind of spirit herb it is. As long as it's a seedling or even a seed, help me find it." Okay, Junior understands. Kwa Chiaoer thought that Xiao Hua was disrespectful and immediately patted her chest. "Remember, I don't want anything that's perennial. I only want seeds or even seedlings." Xiao Hua didn't forget to remind them. Yes, Kwa Rhyming and Kwa Chiaoer took the storage pouch and rushed out excitedly. I am just so noble. There's really no other way. Xiao Hua naturally knew what the two of them were thinking. He loosened his shoulders and said helplessly, "That's right. 1,000-year-old spirit herb is really useless to Xiao Hua." -8. Chapter 2160. Although the inner cores in Kwa Chiaoer's storage pouch were not bad, they couldn't be compared to the sea beasts Xiao Hua caught in the whirlpool. Xiao Hua didn't care about spirit stones, so what could they give him? Perhaps only those strange and unknown things in the Kuei Sea would be able to do so. Xiao Hua threw the storage pouch into the space and placed the finger bone near the white bone in the space. Sure enough, they were one and had a faint lightning connection. Then, he looked at the tiger head token and the ox head token. They were similar, but they didn't have any spiritual energy fluctuations. Who knew if they were really related? As for the demonic spear shaft, Xiao Hua was most concerned about. It was real. When the fragments of the demonic spear were put together, it was really a complete demonic spear. Is this the dragon silver armor? It's actually a famous weapon in the demon world? I can't see anything strange about it. Xiao Hua pinched his chin and thought in confusion. Perhaps I can see its uniqueness after I repair it. Actually, Xiao Hua wanted to ask Kwa Chiaoer about the refining method or her experience. However, since Kwa Chiaoer didn't put the jade slip in the storage pouch, the refining method should be a secret of Blood Red Island. He didn't need to make things difficult for her. Moreover, if Xiao Hua asked, wouldn't his noble image be destroyed? Forget it. I know the refining method of the 5 elements, and I also have the demonic slip from the demon world. With Chiaoer's annotations, how can it be worse than Blood Red Island? Xiao Hua clapped his hands and took out the jade slip that he had been referring to for the past few days. Early in the morning, when the sun rose, the clear light swept across Blood Red Island and dyed it red. Outside the cave where Xiao Hua and Xue Xue were resting, there were already Blood Red Island disciples waiting for them. Xiao Hua opened his eyes and scanned with his divine sense. Naturally, he couldn't let them wait for too long, so he walked out of the cave with Xue Xue. Senior Xiao. The disciple standing in wait was a Qi refining cultivator. He said respectfully, "My Blood Ray Island's island test will begin in an hour. All the martial uncles and senior brothers are preparing for it. So the island master had to ask this junior to invite senior over for the test. Please forgive us, senior. Hee, no problem. Xiao Hua suddenly understood and raised his hand. Senior Xiao, please. The attendant disciple respectfully activated the yellow talisman and led the way in front of him, flying directly to the location of the blood-colored beach that Xiao Hua had just passed when he entered the island yesterday. At this time, a lot of disciples had already gathered on the beach. Many of them were from the banquet last night. More than 10 Middle Foundation establishment stage disciples came over to chat with Xiao Hua. Xiao Hua also responded with a smile. Fellow Taoist Xiao, I heard that you want to exchange some things with I? Just as Xiao Hua was responding, a slightly cold voice sounded. Xiao Hua turned his head and saw a slightly tall female cultivator with slightly dark skin and faint wrinkles at the corner of her eyes. Moreover, her hair was also somewhat white as she landed behind him. Fellow Taoist? What do you want in exchange for I? Xiao Hua thought for a moment. He seemed to have seen this female cultivator last night. However, she was very far away, so he only swept his eyes over her. The female cultivator was slightly taken aback. Weren't you the one who sent Xiao to look for me last night? Oh, so Kuai-Yu is fellow Taoist. Xiao Hua immediately realized. Last night, he mistook Kuai-Yu for a male cultivator, and Kuai Xiao didn't explain. What? Is it not me, but someone else? Kuai-Yu said unhappily. Xiao didn't make it clear yesterday. Xiao Hua hurriedly cupped his hands and said, This Xiao apologizes here. Kuai-Yu's face was slightly happy, and she nodded. This old one hasn't seen that token for a long time. I originally wanted to look for it again in a few days, but Xiao sincerely requested, so this old one took a long time to find it. Thank you for your help, fellow Taoist. Xiao Hua was very happy and said, If fellow Taoist needs anything, you can tell this Xiao. If this Xiao can satisfy fellow Taoist, I will try my best to satisfy you. No need. Kuai-Yu waved her hand and said, You saved Xiao. My blood-red island is indebted to you. How can this old one ask you for something? Oh, really? Thank you, fellow Taoist. Xiao Hua was overjoyed. Kuai-Yu shook her head and said with a smile, This old one didn't agree to give it to you. This old one only said that you don't need to exchange it. Xiao Hua was a bit embarrassed and said with a smile, Fellow Taoist, what do you mean? Kuai-Yu pointed to the distance and said, There is a departure realm heaven in the Ring Island trial. When you go there, the disciples of Blood Red Island must defeat one person to pass, and the person who is defeated will be eliminated. Fellow Taoist Xiao, this old one will wait for fellow Taoist's arrival inside. If you win, this old one will give the token to fellow Taoist. Departure realm heaven? Xiao Hua muttered and said, All right, this Xiao accepts fellow Taoist Kuai's challenge. But what if fellow Taoist Xiao loses? Kuai-Yu narrowed her eyes and looked at Xiao Hua with interest. Fellow Taoist Kuai, are you that confident? Xiao Hua said with a smile, Fellow Taoist Kuai seems to only be at the late stage of foundation establishment, right? Only at the late stage of foundation establishment? Kuai-Yu covered her mouth and said, Fellow Taoist Xiao is indeed a disciple of a large sect of thunder-controlling sect. Fellow Taoist Xiao seems to only be at the early stage of foundation establishment, right? Ha, that's right. This Xiao is wrong. Xiao Hua laughed and looked at Kuai-Yu's hair. He patted his hand and took out a spiritual grass, saying with a smile, If this Xiao loses, this face-retaining grass will be fellow Taoists. Ah, face. Face-retaining grass. When Kuai-Yu heard this, she was overjoyed and almost stuttered. Is this really the face-retaining grass? Fellow Taoist, do you think my thunder-controlling sect's disciple would lie? Xiao Hua patted his hand and put the face-retaining grass back into his storage pouch. At this moment, Kuai-Yu's heart was filled with regret. She really didn't expect that Xiao Hua would have something that all female cultivators on the Dawn Rain continent yearned for even in their dreams. Although she already had some gray hair, after taking the face-retaining grass, not only would her appearance not change, but the wrinkles at the corners of her eyes would also disappear and her gray hair would also become dark. This Xiao Hua is so young, yet he can be welcomed by the island master. How could he be a young cultivator? If he has the face retaining grass, it wouldn't be surprising. Kuo Yu sighed inwardly. Her previous frosty elegance also disappeared. At this moment, Kuo Heng's figure flashed in midair. He held a dark green ocean pearl in his hand and said in a clear voice, "Disciples of the Blood-Red Island, are you ready?" Reporting to the island master, "We are ready." The disciples of the Blood-Red Island sweated in unison. "Good," Kuo Heng said with a smile. "Today is the last day of the 10-year tournament. The previous results have already been recorded in a jade slip by the elders. After the results come out today, the top 10 will be decided. These 10 disciples will not only obtain suitable magic tools, but also get a glimpse of the secret books of my Blood-Red Island. Their cultivation will definitely rise to another level." As he said this, Kuo Heng's body overflowed with brilliance. A water blue color emerged from his hand like a fountain and poured into the ocean pearl. The ocean pearl immediately let out a wong wong sound and trembled as it flew into the air. Swish, swish, swish. A series of wind whistled and the water-type heaven and earth spiritual chi in the air was sucked into the ocean pearl. It gave rise to gusts of wind. After absorbing the heaven and earth spiritual chi for half an incense stick's time, the ocean pearl grew to half a chi in size. The dark blue color inside became even deeper. When Xiao Hua's divine sense swept over it, he felt as if he was about to be sucked in. Just when Xiao Hua was surprised and guessing the effects of the ocean pearl, he saw Kuo Heng stretch out his hand and grab the ocean pearl. Then, he spread his wings and used his hand to smash the ocean pearl onto the beach of the Blood-Red Island. With a loud pong sound, the ocean pearl smashed onto the beach. Not only did it splash up a lot of sand, but the ground under everyone's feet also shook. The sand that splashed up didn't fall down. Instead, it spread along the ocean pearl's spiritual chi and rapidly fluctuated. The ground under everyone's feet also shook more and more. Xiao Hua looked up and saw that all the disciples of the Blood-Red Island were eager to give it a try. They were all staring at a place about 10 zhang in front of them. Roar! A few earth-shattering roars were heard. Plumes of smoke and dust rose from the sea of sand. A blood-red bridge, over 100 feet wide, arched out from the smoke and dust. It gradually crept forward like a spirit snake. The rainbow bridge was either winding, tall, or deep into the island. Xiao Hua's divine sense chased after the rainbow bridge and shockingly discovered that this rainbow bridge circled around the entire blood-red island. Oh, so this is the island trial by fire. Xiao Hua suddenly understood. Above the rainbow bridge, there were more than 10 places where the spiritual chi was obscure. His divine sense couldn't penetrate them. He was afraid that they were some checkpoints of the trial. The departure heaven that Kuo Yu mentioned earlier was probably one of them. Disciples, tomorrow morning will be the limit. When the first ray of sunlight rises, the rainbow bridge will be closed. My Blood-Red Island's once-in-a-decade competition is about to end. The first disciple to reach the end of the rainbow bridge will be the first in this island trial by fire. Kuo Heng raised his voice and said. After Kuo Heng finished speaking, he cast a spell on the transparent enchantment formed by the sea pearl. The enchantment melted like snow and flowed to the ground, connecting the beach where everyone was to the rainbow bridge. Several chi refinement disciples had long been impatient. As soon as the restriction opened, they immediately activated their flying talismans and flew toward the rainbow bridge like arrows leaving the bow. "Husband, you go. I won't participate," Shue said with a smile. "I will wait for you at the end." "Good." Xiao Hua nodded. He clapped his hand and took out a jade box. He said with a smile, "Wife, you don't have to be idle. Take one of these beauty-retaining grass. Your husband still doesn't know how to refine the beauty-retaining pill. Wife, please bear with it for now." "Okay." Shue's eyes flashed with a hint of surprise when she saw Xiao Hua take out the beauty-retaining grass. Now that Xiao Hua gave it to her, she wasn't surprised. She reached out to take it and flew out of the beach with a smile. "Fellow Taoist Xiao, we'll go first. If there's a chance, we'd like to see the means of the Imperial Thunder Sect's disciples." After waiting for the Qi Refinement disciples and Early Foundation Establishment disciples to fly away, A group of middle foundation establishment and late foundation establishment cultivators looked at Xiao Hua with a smile and said, "To be continued. -8. Chapter 2161. Hee, there really are people who are not convinced. Xiao Hua secretly laughed in his heart. He cupped his hands and said, "Well said. But this Xiao wants to make a bet with all of you fellow Taoists. Whoever loses will have to come out from that rare thing inside the storage bag." Ha ha ha, no problem, fellow Taoist Xiao. I hope you have enough face-retaining grass. The cultivators all laughed and flew out using their magic power. Strange. How can they be so sure? Xiao Hua was somewhat surprised, but he still carefully used his magic power and was the last one to get on the Rainbow Bridge. Although he was not a body-refining cultivator, he had tempered his bones for many years. Even Qua Rhyming could not compare to him. He did not feel that these Blood Ray Island cultivators were stronger than him. Far away on the other shore of QC, many fishermen in the small fishing village had already begun to worship Xiao Hua before they set out to fish. No matter how far away they were from QC, in the villages and farms of Ocean City, Cloud City, and other places, the common people of the secular world had also planted the fine seeds gifted by Xiao Hua. This fine seed was clearly different from the previous rice. It was not only resistant to drought. Moreover, it matured early, and the food it produced was incomparably fragrant. Not to mention eating it after steaming, even if it was chewed in the mouth, it would still be sweet. Many babies in the peasant families, because their mothers did not have enough milk, ate the thin porridge made from this grain since they were young. Although they were only a few months old, their small chubby bodies and sparkling eyes were not inferior to those babies of rich families. The farmers' eyes were bright, and they fought to find this fine seed everywhere. What made them gratified and surprised was that this fine seed was actually the same price as ordinary fine seeds, and there were even many places where they did not need silver. Of course, not needing silver also had a price, and this price was to remember the owner of the fine seed and be grateful to this owner from the bottom of their hearts. For the simple farmers, this was really not a big price to pay. They felt that they should be deeply grateful. So much so that when the farmers knew about this matter, when they went to get the fine seed, they had already brought a statue. Although the face was not clear, the person's name was not wrong. The 5 words, Taoist Master Xiao Hua, were clearly written on the body of the statue. Moreover, after these farmers returned, they really did pay their respects to him, because it was the same as thanking anyone. As long as they could bring benefits to the farmers, they would sincerely thank them. Outside a mountain village in the west of Mongolia, due to the drought, many people were carrying a human-shaped statue and climbing up a steep mountain with great difficulty. It seemed like they were going to worship the statue at the top of the mountain. At this moment, a rainbow streaked across the sky from afar, and 3 cultivators landed on the peak. The one in front was a young cultivator wearing a bright red Taoist robe. Behind him were 2 elderly men. However, the 2 old men were very respectful towards this cultivator. This was because the young cultivator was at the nascent soul stage, while the 2 old men were at the mid-gold core stage and early gold core stage. "Master, you should rest here for a while," an old man said respectfully. He hurriedly took out several spirit fruits from his storage bag and handed them over respectfully as well. "Okay." The young cultivator nodded and waved his hand. A dark green praying mat appeared under the shade of the mountain peak. The cultivator floated up and landed on the praying mat. When the cultivator took a bite of the spirit fruit, he casually glanced around and saw a farmer climbing halfway up the mountain. What are these mortals doing?" the cultivator asked casually. Another cultivator scanned with his divine sense and said with a smile, "The farmers are inviting the god. Right now, this place seems to be in a drought. They are inviting the Dragon King to reign." Ha ha ha, what a bunch of ignorant idiots. The young nascent soul cultivator laughed. How can there be a Dragon King in this world? Even if there is one, it would be a pet in our hands. Who can give them clouds and rain? Why are they begging the Dragon King? They might as well beg I. Hee, that's right, master. The tall and thin cultivator who offered the spirit fruit smiled apologetically. The people of this world are all stupid. How would they know that there are only immortals in this world and no gods? Moreover, they don't know how to beg the true immortal in front of them. Instead, they are praying to a fake god that doesn't exist. What a joke. Humph. How can these fools be compared to us cultivators? How can they distinguish right from wrong? The cultivator sneered with disdain. Just as he was about to look up, he frowned. That's not right. From what this old man knows, the dragon god that the mortals worship is the head of a python dragon. It looks exactly like the python dragon of Taiching sect. This statue seems to be in a human shape? There seems to be writing on this statue. Taoist Xiao? What kind of immortal is this Taoist Xiao? Could he be a cultivator of my Ming country? Master. The tall and thin cultivator laughed and explained, since it's a Taoist, it must be a nascent soul cultivator. But if it's a Taoist, then it must be a nascent soul cultivator. But if it's a Taoist, then it must be a Taoist Xiao. From what this disciple sees, this Xiao is a surname. Maybe that Qi refinement cultivator did something, and they remembered it. That's why they directly called him Taoist Xiao. How could they know that the title Taoist is not a casual title? And what Guanming said is true. That nascent soul cultivator was actually Taoist Jingru of Changbai sect. Also, Master, another cultivator hurriedly said, when one's cultivation reaches master's level, one can understand the nature and temper one's infant. The correct way is to enter the spirit-severing stage early and peek into the heavenly Tao. Who would have nothing to do with these fools? It must be some insignificant cultivator who forcibly made a name for himself. Taoist Jingru waved his hand and said, there's no need to pay attention to them. Guanming, the materials you collected this time are very good and will be very useful for the magic treasure I'm refining this time. Once the magic treasure is completed, Master will reward you heavily. I don't dare. It's all because Master's luck is good. This disciple was able to find it after a bit of searching. This disciple is filial to you. Master doesn't need to worry about it. Just as Hu Guanming was about to decline modestly, a series of gongs sounded and the merciful voice of Taoist Xiao was heard. Master, take this disciple to drive them away. Hu Guanming saw Taoist Jingru frown and hurriedly said, no need. Master has rested enough. Let's go. Taoist Jingru waved his sleeve and covered the two of them. Suddenly, they turned into a rainbow and rushed into the sky. Unknowingly, a few days had passed. The three of them passed by a swamp and saw that there were many incense candles placed on the terraced fields on the hillsides. Regardless of gender, old or young, everyone was placed in front of the incense candles and kowtowed to the candles. The smoke from the incense and candles lingered on the hillside. -8. Chapter 2162. Good heavens! Taoist Jingru's divine sense swept over the enshrined tablet and said in astonishment, who is this Taoist Xiao? What kind of earth-shattering thing did he do? Why have I been seeing the same situation these past few days? Master, please wait a moment. Take this disciple to ask. Hu Guanfu was somewhat helpless. He really didn't want to talk to these farmers. After a while, Hu Guanfu's expression turned somewhat strange, carrying a trace of hesitation. Upon seeing this, Taoist Jingru couldn't help but be startled and said in displeasure, what's wrong? Hu Guanfu, who is this Taoist Xiao? Is he that fellow Taoist I know? Or is he a spirit-severing senior? All right, Master knows. Hu Guanfu hesitated for a moment and said, this Taoist Xiao is Xiao Hua. It is said that he is a young cultivator. As for his specific cultivation, these fools don't know. Xiao Hua? Taoist Jingru raised his eyebrows and stood up with a hu sound. He anxiously said, is it Xiao Hua of the Imperial Thunder sect? This disciple doesn't know. Hu Guanfu smiled apologetically and said, those farmers also don't know which sect Xiao Hua comes from. However, I heard that he is a tall and thin young man. Taoist Jingru's expression changed slightly. He extended his hand, and a ray of light flashed. A large hand rushed over and grabbed the three farmers from the ground and lifted them high into the sky. Immortal, save us. Immortal, save us. The three farmers were greatly alarmed and their faces were deathly pale. Daoist Jingru simply didn't listen. He grabbed one of the farmers and pressed his hand on the forehead of one of them. A blood-red light flashed on his hand, and a sinister expression appeared on the farmer's face. Daoist Jingru actually used a soul-searching technique on a secular person. In just a moment, a trace of a smile appeared on the farmer's face. The fear in his eyes disappeared and was replaced by a vacant look. Humph. Daoist Jingru waved his hand as if he didn't care about the farmer's life or death. He suddenly threw the farmer down from the sky. Immortal, spare us. Immortal, spare us. The other two farmers pleaded with all their might, but Daoist Jingru didn't let them go. They didn't know how they had offended this nascent soul cultivator. Their souls were searched and thrown down from the sky for no reason. Xiaohua. It really is Xiaohua. Daoist Jingxi's face is ferocious as he roars. The last experiential learning didn't take your life, yet you still dare to come out for experiential learning. You actually dared to leave the Imperial Lightning Sect. You actually dare to come to Mongolia. It even caused such a sensation in Mongolia. You're simply looking down on this old man. Do you think I won't be able to find you if you don't go near the Changbai sect? Daoist Jingru was so angry that he was speechless. Yes, Xiaohua had taken away the Grand Universe teleportation token, taken many of his medicinal pills, and even assassinated Fantong. This was something that Daoist Jingru, who had always been extremely protective and narcissistic, couldn't tolerate. Unfortunately, Xiaohua had obtained these items at the Feather Immortal Assembly, so Daoist Jingru had no reason to do so. Now that Xiaohua actually ran to Ming Country, how could Daoist Jingru not be angry? If you're here to gain experience, then so be it. If you're sneaking around, no one will know. You actually used the banner of the Imperial Lightning Sect's Xiaohua. Those who didn't know would still be fine, but those who knew wouldn't ridicule him? Daoist Jingru claps his hand and takes out one of the storage pouches. It's actually the storage pouch that Xiaohua gave to the Changbai sect to store the remaining medicinal pills. Daoist Jingru spits a mouthful of essence blood on it. Then he continuously seals with both hands and hits the storage pouch. As the storage pouch emits a bloody brilliance, that brilliance suddenly flies up and flies in the direction of the Kueha Sea. Good. It's actually the Kueha Sea. Daoist Jingru laughs. Let the Kueha Sea be the place where you die. Daoist Jingru's figure turns into a rainbow and flies towards the bloody brilliance. A voice comes over. Hu Guanfu, you all return to the mountain for the time being. Once I kill Xiaohua, I'll return to the sect. Yes, disciple understands. Hu Guanfu looks at the other disciple. The two of them exchange a look, then their figures also fly up and return to the Changbai sect. Poor Zhong Yejing, she originally wanted to handle Xiaohua's matter beautifully and spread Xiaohua's reputation. She wanted to repay Xiaohua's great kindness and even make up for the misunderstanding between Zhongling Mountain Village and Xiaohua. However, she didn't expect that her orders would be carried out by the secular disciples of the Zhong clan without any discount, and even doubled. The result of this completion was that Xiaohua's enemy was directly in front of Xiaohua. Poor Xiaohua, at this moment, he was only slightly shocked. He actually thought that this warning sign was the difficulty of the island trial ahead. Of course, just as Xiaohua flew onto the Rainbow Bridge, there was suddenly a huge force pressing down on him. This huge force was extremely strange. It was similar to the pressure that Xiaohua encountered before, but it was also completely different. That force seemed to be tearing in all directions at the same time, and what it was tearing was Xiaohua's body. An extremely uncomfortable feeling welled up in his heart. He didn't even know how to circulate the true essence in his meridians. I understand. Xiaohua's figure fell slightly, slowly preparing to land on the Rainbow Bridge. He thought to himself, the force on the Rainbow Bridge is tearing in all directions, giving people a kind of unbalanced feeling. It's as if a cultivator is in a kind of inverted or crooked space. If it's in a normal space, true essence will circulate in the meridians as usual. In this kind of space with an illusion, true essence might not be able to coordinate with the body. It might be stagnant, or even go into a fork in the road. and thus suffer from qi deviation. The cultivators of Blood Ray Island are all body refiners. The coordination of true essence must be combined with the tempering of the body. This is their basic homework. Fellow Taoist Xiao. At this moment, Hua Heng's voice transmission came over with a hidden smile. On this rainbow bridge, there are some places that you can't touch, and some places you can only walk. Fellow Taoist Xiao, you can't land here. Once you land, there will be even more powerful restrictions and tests waiting for you. Xiao Hua was slightly taken aback. He hurriedly circulated his magic power. At this moment, his feet were only a few inches away from the rainbow bridge. The ribbons on the rainbow bridge were already blurred, and there seemed to be some obscure spiritual power gradually forming. If it wasn't for Hua Heng's reminder, the restrictions on the rainbow bridge would have been activated. Many thanks, Island Master Hua. Xiao Hua raised his voice and said, "This Xiao didn't know there were so many taboos. Moreover, this Blood Ray Island's magic power has really opened this Xiao's eyes. Ha ha ha. I'm indebted to the Imperial Thunder Sect's disciples' praise." Huang also laughed and said, "Fellow Taoist Xiao, go ahead. There are many interesting tests on this rainbow bridge. Fellow Taoist can give it a try." Hearing this, Xiao Hua laughed loudly, and his figure slightly swayed. He had originally cultivated the Buddhist sect's great strength Vajra Dharma body. Even the Qi refining disciples of Blood Ray Island weren't afraid of this little thing for body refinement. So how could Xiao Hua be afraid? Without using the bright thunder escape, Xiao Hua urged the wind escape technique that he felt a moment ago. His figure very strangely floated up, and like a flowing cloud, he flew forward. Others didn't feel it, but Hua Hong could see Xiao Hua's cultivation level. He knew that the initial restrictions on the rainbow bridge were somewhat strange. The stronger they were, the stronger they would be. Even if he was at the end of the rainbow bridge, it was impossible for him to move as fast as usual, let alone with his elegant posture. I'm afraid those few little guys will be tortured by Xiao Hua. The corners of Hua Heng's mouth curled into a smile. He seemed to recall the arrogance of several late Foundation establishment disciples who came to his place to test him last night. Sure enough, just as Xiao Hua had thought, he had only flown a few dozen feet when the pressure suddenly rose. If Xiao Hua hadn't been prepared, or if he hadn't been able to control his true essence with ease, he would have definitely been lifted into the air by this force. Although the dozen or so Qi refining disciples had flown earlier than everyone else, their feet were now facing up, and their heads were facing down. They were adjusting their sense of direction. They were adjusting their true Qi. Motherfucker, I'm afraid this force can change at any time. Xiao Hua laughed inwardly. Otherwise, these Blood Red Island disciples who know the inside out about the trial by fire would all be caught. In the following several hundred zhang distance, that indescribable force suddenly moved up and down, suddenly to the left and suddenly to the right. At one point, it was even extremely restrained, as if a large hand was grabbing onto Xiao Hua. The true essence in his body was extremely difficult to circulate, and his figure was also falling down. At this moment, several Foundation establishment disciples fell below Xiao Hua. These disciples' feet were firmly stuck on the rainbow bridge. No matter how they urged their magic power, they were unable to free themselves from the rainbow bridge. It seemed that one of them had already rolled up his Taoist robe, revealing his thick arms. That alms bowl-like fist was precisely hitting the restriction below his feet. However, when Xiao Hua flew past this section, suddenly, another unparalleled force descended from the sky, imprisoning Xiao Hua's entire body. His true essence also stagnated, and he was simply unable to mobilize his magic power. Xiao Hua's body couldn't help but fall down. How can this be? Xiao Hua thought of the embarrassment of those Foundation establishment disciples just now, and he was shocked. Others could make a fool of themselves, but he couldn't. That was the face of the Imperial Thunder Sect, making others laugh. Rise. Xiao Hua's body slightly slid forward. He didn't rely on magic power, but pure flowing cloud movement technique, and even some ethereal steps techniques. Borrowing this moment of respite, Xiao Hua shook his arms. A blood-red brilliance flashed around his body, and one could almost hear bang-bang-bang sounds. Many of the restrictions on the Rainbow Bridge were actually broken by him. The true essence in his meridians could circulate, and Xiao Hua's flying technique could be used. You want to use restrictions to imprison this young master? Dream on. Xiao Hua was secretly pleased. His body swayed again, and incomparably dashed across the Rainbow Bridge. Very quickly, he turned a corner. However, when he turned the corner, he was once again stupefied in midair. Below his feet, on the Rainbow Bridge that was roughly several hundred zhang in front of him, there was a black mass of people moving about. It was precisely all of the Blood Ray Island disciples who had landed on the Rainbow Bridge. At this moment, the Rainbow Bridge had already transformed into a towering mountain path, and everyone was doing their best to climb. To be continued. -8. Chapter 2163. Damn it! I didn't make a mistake. Xiao Hua almost stretched out a small hand from his throat. No wonder Kuang said just now that there are some places that can't be landed, and some places that must be landed. This place is a place that tests the strength of the physical body. Xiao Hua hardened his heart. Since this young master is already flying, I might as well not land. I'll directly fly to a high place in front and show them my power. While thinking, Xiao Hua urged his magic power. Although his figure wasn't as graceful as before, it was more or less the same as an ordinary cultivator's flying technique. He flew over the heads of a group of Blood Ray Island disciples and flew to a high place on the Rainbow Bridge. Io, someone can fly? Which senior brother is this? Immediately, someone clamored. To be honest, they already knew that one couldn't fly in this place. All magic power was restricted, and only the physical body could be controlled. Perhaps some people had tried before but failed. Now that they saw someone actually fly over, how could they not be surprised? Good. As expected of a thunder-controlling sect disciple. He's really different. The disciple who recognized Xiao Hua panted as he ran and climbed while looking up at the sky and sighing with emotion. Xiao Hua's little tail gradually rose up. However, after he flew for nearly 3 minutes, below him were several late-stage Foundation establishment disciples. Xiao Hua originally wanted to see their envious gazes, but one of them actually had some ridicule in his eyes. Strange, is there something wrong? Xiao Hua immediately became suspicious and hurriedly released his divine sense. However, this place naturally also restricted divine sense. Without waiting for his divine sense to leave his body, a powerful hurricane descended from the sky and blew toward Xiao Hua, wanting to blow him straight out of the Rainbow Bridge. I say, Xiao Hua didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Why can't you even give me a chance to steal a trick? If it was someone else, this hurricane would probably blow them away in one breath. However, Xiao Hua had just learned the flowing cloud movement technique, which was the wind escape technique. This wind was admittedly powerful, but it was precisely what Xiao Hua wanted. Xiao Hua controlled his body to descend while flying forward. When he landed steadily, he had already landed in front of everyone. It can also be like this. The few late-stage Foundation establishment disciples in front were somewhat stupefied. Even in their dreams, they didn't think that this punishment technique would actually send Xiao Hua flying so far. I'll run. Xiao Hua landed on the ground and laughed heartily. As his feet glided, he dashed towards the top of the Rainbow Bridge. His figure was precisely ethereal steps. The Rainbow Bridge was still under their feet. Stepping on it was no different from stepping on a beach. It seemed like there was sand around their feet, making it difficult to walk, let alone walk up. The group of Foundation establishment and aura refining disciples were like ordinary farmers climbing a mountain. Their foreheads were covered in sweat as they climbed with great difficulty. Unlike the disciples of Scarlet Island, the tall and skinny lad who was leading the group was actually walking in an indescribable pace. His waist was slightly swaying, and he seemed to have a rhythm to his movements. It looked like it was still rather easy. Xiao Hua, how interesting. Hua Hang could naturally see everything that was happening on the Rainbow Bridge. He narrowed his eyes slightly and said with a smile while feeling surprised. After passing the peak of the Rainbow Bridge, there was another stretch of slow road. Xiao Hua saw that the restriction on his body had disappeared and hesitated. He didn't know if he should use his magic power to fly or continue using the ethereal steps. Fellow Taoist Xiao, good luck. At this moment, a burly disciple of Scarlet Island caught up from behind. Without any hesitation, he activated his magic power and rushed forward at an extremely fast speed. Pung! It was as if he had broken through a restriction. With a flash of brilliance, the fatty disappeared without a trace. Damn it, what's going on now? Xiao Hua looked at the empty rainbow bridge in front of him in a daze. Fellow Taoist Xiao, why don't you hurry over? Immediately after, several late-stage Foundation establishment cultivators also caught up, and one of them asked curiously, if fellow Taoist Xiao doesn't want to go, we'll go first. Seeing that Xiao Hua didn't speak, the two people behind him hurriedly activated their magic power and rushed towards the restriction. Oh, fellow Taoist Xiao, hurry up and go. Use your fastest speed to rush towards the restriction. The cultivator who reminded him earlier didn't dare to be negligent and hurriedly said, the greater the impact, the further the distance the restriction will teleport. Moreover, the quota is limited. He saw that the disciple had also disappeared. Xiao Hua no longer hesitated. He activated his magic power and used the bright thunder escape. With a boom, he rushed into the restriction. Rumble. A series of rumbling sounds came from the Rainbow Bridge, and the entire bridge shook slightly. A few of the Scarlet Island disciples who were climbing the peak actually lost their balance and fell down with a few plop sounds. It didn't matter if they sat down, but they saw a red brilliance flash above the Rainbow Bridge. Their bodies were completely submerged by the Rainbow Bridge, as if they had fallen into the sea, gradually leaking out from under the Rainbow Bridge. Who is so shameless to do such a thing? Several Scarlet Island disciples who were eliminated shouted in exasperation. Imperial Thunder Sect is indeed the Imperial Thunder Sect? Kuaheng sighed and shook his head slightly. Fortunately, I didn't listen to the instigation of those little bastards. They wanted me to personally go down and compete with this guy. They were simply looking for their own humiliation. This flying technique is my shortcoming. Compared to this guy, I'm afraid I'm not even fit to carry his shoes. However, I heard from Quachiao that Xiao Hua is a cultivator with a benevolent heart. Moreover, he has a request for my Scarlet Island. Yes, he can even bring great benefits to my Scarlet Island. Kuaheng thought inwardly. Unfortunately, Quachiao and Rhyming have already made a hard oath. They can't speak blindly. They can only remind me to treat Xiao Hua well. Moreover, they also vaguely warn me not to provoke him. Look at Xiao Hua again. Today, he participated in some island trial for no reason. Isn't it just to give me a warning? Hee, how many years have I lived? How can I not see through this? However, what good things can Xiao Hua have to make my Scarlet Island happy? Sigh. Xiao Hua actually charged into the huge stone array. This guy, how fast is his flying speed? This huge stone array. If one doesn't have the strength of a late gold core realm, it's impossible to pass through the restriction. This is bad. This late gold core realm strength is only for my Scarlet Island disciples. He is a disciple of the Imperial Thunder Sect. However, this huge stone array is hidden within the Rainbow Bridge. Even I can't control it unless I interrupt the entire trial. This is bad. This is bad. This Imperial Thunder Sect disciple will be smashed into a meat patty. I'm in trouble. Kuaheng muttered. His expression changed rapidly. His figure flew, and he rapidly flew toward the opposite side of Scarlet Island. As for Xiao Hua, he felt a sudden pressure on his body. Traces of black and white light flashed before his eyes. Xiao Hua knew that what the Scarlet Island disciple said was true. He was indeed transported. -8. Chapter 2164. Bang! A loud sound rang out. Without waiting for Xiao Hua to open his eyes, an extremely cryptic fluctuation came over. Xiao Hua scanned with his divine sense and was immediately shocked. An absurd feeling welled up in his heart. At this moment, Xiao Hua was in a vast starry sky. In front of him were many planets that were constantly revolving. The trajectory was very obvious. It was extremely chaotic. The loud sound just now was the sound of two planets colliding with each other in the distance. This, Xiao Hua's divine sense could not scan the end of the starry sky, but he was complaining in his heart, "Damn it, this starry sky is definitely not a real starry sky. This bloody red island can't have such a powerful transmission array. But how can there be so many ancient ruins on the islands overseas? Ming country, it's really a strange place." While he was thinking about this, a fierce howl of the wind resounded from behind Xiao Hua. Besides that, the howl of the wind was accompanied by a shackling force that enveloped the space in an area of 300 m around Xiao Hua. Damn it, did I make a mistake? Why is it a shackling force again? Xiao Hua really hated the shackling force that appeared from time to time on Bloody Red Island. It restricted all true essence, leaving no trace of magic power in his body. Everything had to rely on his physical body. Since he was a cultivator, he must have the awareness of a cultivator. If he relied on his physical body, he would be a boorish man. Naturally, this shackling force also blocked Xiao Hua's divine sense. At this moment, Xiao Hua could only rely on his physical strength. It's just a trial for Bloody Red Island disciples. I don't believe that I would be afraid of this. Xiao Hua suddenly turned around and stretched out his hand, holding the devil hammer in his hand. Behind Xiao Hua, a meteor streaked across the night sky, rushing toward Xiao Hua. Although Xiao Hua's face was calm, his heart was also nervous. After all, this was a starry sky. If a meteor really came, how could he catch it? Fortunately, the power of the meteor was swift and fierce, and the wind was already blowing against Xiao Hua's face, almost suffocating him. In Xiao Hua's field of vision, the meteor was not as big as he imagined. It was only a few zhang in size. This kind of huge rock, even if it came from afar, Xiao Hua was confident that he could still fight it. Go! Xiao Hua didn't dare to stay in place and wait for the meteor to fly over. He quickly rushed forward, raised his devil hammer, and smashed it in the direction of the meteor. Boom! Xiao Hua's ears vibrated with ringing. A wave of pain came from Xiao Hua's arm that was holding the devil hammer. Xiao Hua himself was shaken and sent flying. That meteor was actually shattered by Xiao Hua. Ha ha ha! After the soreness in his arm subsided, a refreshing feeling emerged from the bottom of his heart. Xiao Hua looked up to the sky and laughed loudly. No matter how many meteors there are, let them all fall. Even if it's a meteor shower, I will smash it flat. Xiao Hua's arrogant voice reverberated through the starry sky. As if he had hit the nail on the head, the two planets around him suddenly emitted a dazzling brilliance and flew towards Xiao Hua like moths to a flame. Boom! Boom! Although the two meteors fell at the same time, they were still smashed apart by Xiao Hua without delay. This array seems to have an extremely great effect on refining the body. Needless to say, Xiao Hua's arm became even more sore and numb. But after the numbness, a comfortable feeling once again spread throughout his body. Xiao Hua somewhat felt that his body had a slight improvement. Great! Knowing that the starry sky had such an effect, Xiao Hua's spirit was greatly shaken. He waved his devil hammer and waited in the sky again. Just as Xiao Hua expected, after the two meteors, another 3 meteors came. They emitted a sharp sound of wind as they attacked Xiao Hua from 3 directions. Naturally, the size of these 3 meteors was slightly larger than the previous one. Although Xiao Hua didn't have any magic power at this time, he still had the ethereal steps and the Big Dipper Divine Fist. Dealing with these meteors wasn't a problem. Once the number of meteors reached 6, Xiao Hua would be unable to deal with them by relying on the Devil Hammer alone. Therefore, Xiao Hua didn't hesitate to take out the Great Wisdom Sword. He used the Heavenly Staff technique to deal with the 7 meteors that were pouncing towards Xiao Hua from all directions. The meteors in the starry sky were quite ingenious. Although 7 or 8 huge meteors smashed towards the small Xiao Hua at the same time, there was an extremely subtle gap between them. Not only did they smash at different angles, but when they got close, they absolutely wouldn't touch each other. When Xiao Hua waved the Heavenly Staff technique, he couldn't stop one strike after another for even a moment. This was because as long as there was a slight pause, the following meteors would immediately smash into his body. When there were 24 meteors in a group, Xiao Hua finished smashing the first 22 meteors. A wave of exhaustion suddenly came from his body. This was something that Xiao Hua had never felt before. This is bad. Xiao Hua secretly complained in his heart. He knew that as long as he finished smashing the 24 meteors in a group, the comfortable feeling afterwards would immediately drive away this feeling of exhaustion. Or perhaps he could also rely on the flow of the Big Dipper Divine Fist to eliminate this exhaustion. However, the left and right meteors were right in front of him. Where would he find the free time? Just at this moment, Xiao Hua suddenly had a flash of inspiration. He slightly closed his eyes, and the Heart Sutra of the Wind Escape technique flowed. He comprehended the two incoming boulders from the left and right at the same time. As the corner of Xiao Hua's mouth faintly rose, he very confidently raised his hands slightly and raised the Great Wisdom Sword horizontally. With a loud bang, the two meteors smashed into the two ends of the Great Wisdom Sword at almost the same time. The two boulders shattered at the same time. Xiao Hua didn't use the slightest bit of strength. However, the comfortable feeling of Xiao Hua's chi wings also didn't appear at the same time. Just when Xiao Hua wanted to use the Big Dipper Divine Fist, he saw the two shattered boulders suddenly swirl up in the air, separately forming two vortexes that enveloped Xiao Hua. Ouch! Xiao Hua stared blankly. Just when he was about to dodge, he saw the two vortexes faintly flickering with black and white brilliance. It was the legendary array that was about to activate. Thus, Xiao Hua didn't resist anymore, allowing the vortexes of shattered rocks to envelop him. After the brilliance flashed, Xiao Hua's figure disappeared from this space, and the hundreds of boulders that had previously disappeared gradually flashed again. Good. Just when Xiao Hua's figure appeared on the Rainbow Bridge, Kua Heng's praise rang in his ears. Xiao Hua composed himself and saw Kua Heng standing outside the Rainbow Bridge, looking at him with a kind of admiration on his face. Fellow Taoist praise. Xiao Hua complained as soon as they met. Why does this Rainbow Bridge sound have so many taboos? Why didn't you tell me in advance? You made this Xiao Hua very embarrassed. Fellow Taoist Xiao, you really hid your strength well. Kua Heng simply ignored Xiao Hua's complaints, his eyes flashing with a strange light as he said, My blood-red island's boulder array hasn't been broken in for thousands of years. No, it should be for tens of thousands of years. I remember in the ancient records that the last person who entered was a late gold core stage senior, whose cultivation was extremely close to the nascent soul stage. Xiao Hua stared blankly. He didn't expect that just by casually flying, he would cause such a big trouble. Hee, fellow Taoist praise is a bit exaggerated. Xiao Hua laughed mischievously and said, Just now, weren't there a few late Foundation establishment disciples who were transported together with this Xiao? Could it be that they didn't enter this boulder array? My praise isn't exaggerated at all. Kua Heng laughed and said, The restrictions that were taken out just now were to test the degree of body tempering of my blood-red island's disciples. Whoever can fly with the greatest weight can be transported into the corresponding array. This array has the yellow wind array, invisible rain array, open fire array, flying snow array, fine metal array, and boulder array. If every disciple who enters the array can pass the test of the array, not only can they obtain certain benefits from the array, they can also be transported across the Rainbow Bridge according to the power of the array. Among them, the yellow wind array, invisible rain array, and open fire array are open arrays, while the other three are hidden arrays. Without the cultivation of gold core stage and above, it is impossible to enter. Those little brats probably learned some tricks and know that as long as they fly fast, their speed increases and the weight of the impact on the restrictions will also increase. That's why they tried their best to fly. With their cultivation, at most, they can enter the invisible rain array. I'm afraid that they can't even enter the open fire array. This old man didn't expect that fellow Taoist Xiao could actually enter the boulder array directly. Kua Heng said with interest, That boulder array is something that even this old man didn't have the chance to enter. What benefits did fellow Taoist Xiao get inside? How many boulders did you dodge? Dodged? Xiao Hua was taken aback. He rolled his eyes and didn't answer Kua Heng's question. Instead, he asked curiously, Since fellow Taoist Qua knows that I can enter the boulder array, you naturally have the ability to control the rainbow bridge. Furthermore, the ocean pearl. Ha ha ha. When Kwa Heng saw that Xiao Hua was being careful, he explained, I won't hide it from fellow Taoist Xiao. The Rainbow Bridge isn't just a training ground for my Blood Ray Island's disciples, it is also a powerful method for my Blood Ray Island to defend against enemies. The Ocean Pearl is this old man's artifact, and it is also an artifact passed down by the previous island lords. This old man can control the Ocean Pearl to bring out the Rainbow Bridge, and I can sense the movements within the Rainbow Bridge. However, as for the boulder array, this old man doesn't know where the hidden array is located. Oh, I see. Seeing that the array was related to Blood Ray Island's secrets, Xiao Hua didn't ask any more questions and was about to fly up again. However, Kwa Heng persevered and asked, Fellow Taoist Xiao, you haven't told this old man how many boulders did you dodge? Hee, fellow Taoist Kwa, can you tell me how many boulders did you dodge? Xiao Hua wasn't in a hurry to answer Kwa Heng's question. Kwa Heng rolled his eyes and hesitated for a moment before replying, I'll let fellow Taoist Xiao know. I heard that a certain senior shattered 17 boulders and dodged 18 boulders. I'm ashamed. Xiao Hua's face was flushed with shame. He cupped his hands and said, compared to senior, this Xiao is still far inferior. This Xiao only shattered 14 boulders. I had just dodged the 15th boulder when I was sent out. Oh, even though Kwa Heng's expression was calm, his heart was in turmoil. When he explained the situation in detail, he had already increased the number of boulders. In reality, it was 12 boulders. However, he still didn't expect that Xiao Hua was more powerful than he had expected. -8. Chapter 2165. This was because according to the records, Blood Ray Island's Qi refinement disciples were considered to have passed the test by passing 3 layers of boulders. Passing 6 layers of boulders was considered to have passed the foundation establishment stage. Passing 9 layers of boulders was considered to have passed the body tempering stage of the Golden Core realm. However, he didn't expect Xiao Hua to actually shatter 14 boulders. In other words, Xiao Hua's body refining technique was even more powerful than that late-stage Golden Core realm senior who was about to conceive a nascent soul. Kwa Heng knew that Xiao Hua could only say less and absolutely not more about the numbers Xiao Hua mentioned. This guy, with such a body refining technique, why did he come to my Blood Red Island? Kwa Heng was even more curious, but seeing Xiao Hua looking at the front of the Rainbow Bridge and about to fly again, Kwa Heng couldn't help but laugh. Fellow Taoist Xiao, what's wrong? You still want to continue the trial? My Blood Red Island's trial is body refining technique and magic. Fellow Taoist's body refining technique is so powerful, not to mention your magic power. Why do you still need to participate in the trial? Kwa Heng curled his lips in his heart. You've already shown your strength, and I also know. What's the point of continuing the trial? Oh, Xiao Hua laughed. There's a fellow Taoist called Kwa Yu on your island. He invited me to a battle in Departure Realm Heaven. I can't not go. Haha, Kwa Heng laughed. Departure Realm Heaven is in the middle of the Rainbow Bridge. Fellow Taoist Xiao has already crossed 80% of the bridge. How can you return? Besides, Kwa Yu chose Departure Realm Heaven because he wanted to use the illusion to confine his magic power and divine sense. He could only rely on his physical strength to fight. His plan. I'm afraid he's also part of fellow Taoist Zhao's plan, right? I can't go back? Xiao Hua was stunned. He turned around and flew back. Who would have thought that just as he flew one zhong, a huge force blocked his front, preventing him from retreating. This huge force was completely different from before. It was extremely powerful and couldn't be broken by relying on his physical body alone. Fellow Taoist Xiao, you don't need to try anymore. Kwa Heng laughed. After crossing half of the Rainbow Bridge, you can't go back unless fellow Taoist Zhao's magic power surpasses nascent soul. That's just one realm higher than me. Hee, so that's how it is. Xiao Hua laughed mischievously and said, in that case, the disciple closest to this Xiao. Kwa Heng nodded and said, yes, we just passed through the leaving realm heaven and reached the halfway point of the Rainbow Bridge. Fellow Taoist Xiao, you don't have to bother with them. Come, fellow Taoist Xiao, We will wait at the end. This old man wants to know why fellow Taoist Xiao is looking for the Sunset Island. Oh my, could it be that fellow Taoist Qua knows where the Sunset Island is? Xiao Hua was pleasantly surprised. That's right. Qua Heng nodded and said, I'm afraid I'm the only one who knows about this in QC. Actually, this old man is also surprised. Where did fellow Taoist Xiao learn of the setting sun island? Now that Xiao Hua had shown his strength, he didn't stay on the Rainbow Bridge to train. Instead, he flew out of the Rainbow Bridge and followed Qua Heng to the end of the Rainbow Bridge. Landing in front of a cave, Qua Heng looked at Xiao Hua and said, Yesterday, Xiao told this old man that fellow Taoist Xiao is looking for the Sunset Island. This old man was very surprised. The Sunset Island has been there for hundreds of thousands of years, maybe even millions of years. No one mentioned it. Why did fellow Taoist suddenly look for the Sunset Island? Hundreds of thousands of years? Xiao Hua was stunned. What's wrong with the Sunset Island? Fellow Taoist Xiao hasn't answered this old man's question, right? Qua Heng didn't answer but asked instead. Xiao Hua nodded and said, This old man got some information from the city lord of Haoming City. This old man is looking for a kind of cultivation technique, which can only be found on the Sunset Island. So, Haoming City? Qua Heng seemed to be thinking about something. After a while, he stared at Xiao Hua and said, Fellow Taoist Xiao, what kind of cultivation technique do you need? Fellow Taoist Qua, you only need to tell this old man where the Sunset Island is. Why do you need to know what cultivation technique this old man is looking for? Xiao Hua said hesitantly. Actually, Qua Heng hesitated for a moment and said, Actually, the Bloody Red Island is the Sunset Island. Well, you can't say it like that. However, fellow Taoist Xiao, just think of the Bloody Red Island as the Sunset Island. Xiao Hua was even more shocked, but he immediately understood. Of course, the Bloody Red Island was built on the body refining technique. Every male disciple had extraordinary strength. Wasn't that the effect of bone tempering? If it was purely for the body refining technique, why would the male disciples have such a high level of cultivation? He really couldn't see the tall mountain for a leaf. Good. Xiao Hua clapped his hands and said, Since fellow Taoist Qua is so frank, then this old man won't hide it. This old man is looking for the Sunset Island's body refining technique. Strange. Qua Heng laughed and pointed at Xiao Hua, saying, Fellow Taoist Zhao's body refining technique is actually more profound than this old man's. This old man doesn't think that my Bloody Red Island's body refining technique can be of any help to fellow Taoist Xiao. Alas, actually, only now did Xiao Hua realize that he had been led astray by Qua Heng. He smiled bitterly and said, This old man was wrong just now. This old man actually wants the Sunset Island's bone tempering technique. Bone tempering technique? Qua Heng's eyes flashed with a hint of surprise. Why does fellow Taoist Xiao want the bone tempering technique? This old man cultivates the lightning evasion technique of my Imperial Thunder sect, and it needs the help of external forces to temper my bones. Otherwise, the lightning evasion technique can't reach great success. Xiao Hua said without hesitation. This old man also thought of many ways. Later, I got the news of the Sunset Island from Haoming City's Yaohongzhen. Only then did I come all the way here. This old man didn't expect that Qua Qiao and Qua Riming were both descendants of the Sunset Island. To tell you the truth, fellow Taoist Xiao, the bone tempering technique is a secret technique of my Bloody Red Island. Qua Heng sighed and said, However, this bone tempering technique is extremely difficult to cultivate. If you only cultivate the bone tempering technique, you can't reach great success. Therefore, my ancestor combined the bone tempering technique with the help of other body tempering techniques. Only then could the bone tempering technique of my Bloody Red Island have some success. However, look at my physique and the other male cultivators of my Bloody Red Island. These are the drawbacks of cultivating the bone tempering technique and the body tempering technique. Fellow Taoist Xiao, do you think this bone tempering technique will have an effect on your lightning evasion technique? Yes, Xiao Hua nodded without hesitation. Qua Heng thought for a moment and said, This old man already understands your intention. Then, what will you use to exchange with this old man? From what Shower said, you have something that this old man urgently needs. However, this old man can't think of anything after thinking about it for a long time. With a smile on his face, Xiaohua suddenly flicked his big sleeve and covered Kua Hang from top to bottom. A kind of confining force was generated from his big sleeve, which was extremely similar to the one on the Rainbow Bridge. All of a sudden, all of Kua Hang's magic power was confined. Ah? Whirled in the sleeve. Kua Hang was suddenly startled. Soon after, he was wild with joy. At the same time, the red brilliance around his body flashed extremely quickly, and the big sleeve of his Taoist robe was also raised. -8. Chapter 2166. Unfortunately, under Xiao Hua's heaven and earth sleeve technique, Kua Hang's Taoist robe was like a broken bag that couldn't be opened. The heaven and earth sleeve technique that Kua Hang was usually proud of actually didn't work. Just as Kua Hang's expression slightly changed, Xiao Hua swung his sleeve, and that restrictive force immediately dissipated as if it had never appeared and was withdrawn into Xiao Hua's sleeve. So that's how it is. Kua Hang clapped his hands and said, "This old man was wondering what could make this old man submit. It turns out that fellow Taoist Xiao obtained the complete heaven and earth sleeve technique of my blood-red island." "Hee, fellow Taoist Kua, you're wrong." Xiao Hua shook his head and said, "This old man also copied a jade slip in the Imperial Thunder sect. This heaven and earth sleeve technique doesn't completely belong to blood-red island anymore." This, Kua Hang's expression was somewhat uncertain. After pondering for a moment, he sighed and said, "Presumably, Shower has already told fellow Taoist Xiao that the heaven and earth sleeve technique of my blood-red island is already incomplete." "Yes, that's right." Xiao Hua also secretly nodded and answered, "All right." Kua Hang said again, "This old man won't talk about the heaven and earth sleeve technique. Since fellow Taoist Xiao has already copied a copy in the Imperial Thunder sect, presumably, the disciples of the Imperial Thunder sect will also practice it in the future. As for the bone-tempering technique, fellow Taoist Xiao definitely can't leave a copy in your sect." Hearing this, Xiao Hua was overjoyed and said with a smile, "Not only the bone-tempering technique, but also the heaven and earth sleeve technique. This old man can also promise that only the disciples of the Imperial Thunder sect's myriad Thunder Valley can practice it." Great. Although Kua Hang said it was great, he was really bitter in his heart. Of course, this old man took the thing that he lost and wanted his own thing, but he couldn't refuse. Firstly, this old man had already left a copy of the thing that he lost, so it was meaningless for him to keep this old man here. Secondly, he didn't have the confidence to keep this old man here. "Fellow Taoist Xiao, please keep this matter a secret for this old man. You can't let the disciples of Blood Red Island know about it." Kua Hang clapped his hands and took out a slightly larger jade slip and said, "Bone tempering technique is only the foundation of another technique of Blood Red Island that has been completely lost, but now it has already become a secret technique, unique technique of Blood Red Island. If this disciple finds out that this old man has leaked the information, I'm afraid he won't let it go." "Hee, fellow Taoist Kua, you traded an insignificant instance for the complete jade slip of Blood Ray Island's long-lost universe within sleeve. In that case, fellow Taoist praising is a meritorious service to Blood Ray Island. Who would spout nonsense?" Xiao Hua already knew from Kua Qiao how important this world in sleeve was to Scarlet Island. Naturally, he ignored Kua Hang's nonsense. He took the jade slip and immersed his divine sense into it. After a short moment, a smile appeared on the corners of Xiao Hua's mouth. He clapped his hands and took out a jade slip as well, and then he said with a smile, "Fellow Taoist Kua, please take a look." Kua Hang's hands trembled slightly, almost imperceptibly. He took the jade slip and hurriedly checked it. After a long while, Kua Hang let out a long sigh. He put the jade slip into his storage bag and said, "I've finally completed the sleeve cosmos technique. I've fulfilled the wishes of several generations of island masters." As he spoke, he bowed towards Xiao Hua and said, "Many thanks, fellow Taoist Xiao." "Ha ha ha, no need, no need." Xiao Hua hurriedly supported Kua Hang. "I also want to thank, however, Before Xiao Hua could finish speaking, another burst of indescribable palpitation surged into his heart. It interrupted Xiao Hua's words. My goodness, what is it now? Xiao Hua raised his eyes and looked towards the Rainbow Bridge. Oh, a late-stage Foundation establishment disciple has already come out. Kua Heng's heart was extremely refreshed. He pointed at the pitch-black hole and said, That's not right. When I entered the Rainbow Bridge just now, I felt some palpitation. I thought the Rainbow Bridge's restrictions were somewhat powerful. Xiao Hua thought to himself, now that I've already come out of the Rainbow Bridge, why do I still feel palpitation? This feeling should be coming from the hand of karma. It has nothing to do with the Buddha's Saraira. Could it be that there's some karma entangling me? Fellow Taoist Xiao, how can you go back on your word? A loud and clear voice was heard. I waited for you in the departure heaven for a long time. I didn't expect you to leave the trial so early. In that case, your youth-retaining grass should have lost to I? When Xiao Hua raised his eyes, he saw that it was Kua Yu. He was somewhat angrily shouting at him. Kua Yu, don't be rude to fellow Taoist Xiao. Kua Heng scolded. Fellow Taoist Xiao came out of the huge stone array. According to the rules of the previous trial, the first place of this trial belongs to him. Fellow Taoist Xiao felt that he was an outsider and didn't want to compete with you. That's why he came here to talk to this old man first. Tell me, if he went to the departure heaven, would you be his opponent? Moreover, even if he didn't go to the departure heaven, could you be considered to have one? Ah? Huge stone array? Is it the legendary huge stone array hidden in the Rainbow Bridge? Not only was Kua Yu shocked, but the other late-stage Foundation establishment disciples were also incomparably astonished. Would this old man lie to you? Kua Heng said with a smile. Alas, that's right. Kua Yu sighed and hung his head dejectedly. Fellow Taoist Xiao passed through the departure heaven first. This servant has already lost. This token is fellow Taoist Zhao's. As he said that, Kua Yu patted his storage bag and gave a pig-headed token to Xiao Hua. What is this? Kua Heng obviously saw it for the first time. This disciple also doesn't know. I just picked it up in the sea a long time ago. Kua Yu said helplessly. Don't look at this, Xiao. This Xiao also doesn't know. This Xiao just thought it was fun. Xiao Hua took the token and hurriedly waved his hand. But how could Kua Heng believe him? This youth-retaining grass is for fellow Taoist Kua. Xiao Hua generously gave the youth-retaining grass to Kua Yu. Really? In that case, many thanks, fellow Taoist Xiao. Kua Yu was even more overjoyed and reached out to take the youth-retaining grass. Just when everyone was a bit envious, roar, an earth-shaking clear sound rang out, as if tens of thousands of bulls were roaring. The entire Scarlet Island was shaken. This sound was extremely similar to the sound Xiao Hua heard when the Great Flag Reef sunk into the Great Flag Reef. This is bad. Xiao Hua was greatly alarmed. He knew that the warning in his heart just now was probably the heavenly might triggered by this sound. Thus, without hesitation, he immediately flew up and shouted, Fellow Taoist Kua, I'm afraid this Scarlet Island is about to sink. Previously, this was the situation that Xiao and I encountered on the Great Flag Reef. Quickly gather the disciples and escape. Immediately after, Xiao Hua sent out his divine sense and transmitted it to Xue Xue. Sure enough, before the sound disappeared from their ears, the Scarlet Island was greatly shaken. It was almost visible to the naked eye. Withdraw. Seeing such a situation, how could Kua Heng dare to hesitate? His figure quickly flew up, and he unceasingly struck the pitch-black hole on the Rainbow Bridge in front of him with magic seals. A blood-colored halo was repeatedly emitted from the hole, and like flowing water, it quickly circled around the entire Rainbow Bridge. All the disciples training in the Rainbow Bridge revealed their bodies in an extremely terrifying manner. Kua Chiao and Kua Riming's faces were even more ashen. No one knew the power of heaven and earth better than them. Rise, just when Kua Heng stretched out his hand, like an eagle's claw, to grab the sea pearl from the disappearing Rainbow Bridge. Suddenly, in the direction of the setting sun outside the Scarlet Island, the sea surface within a range of several dozen li abruptly surged like boiling water. At this moment, the Scarlet Island was unexpectedly calm. An incomparably pure spiritual energy of heaven and earth overflowed from the sea surface. Along with the sea breeze, it blew to the Scarlet Island. This, Xiaohua was originally looking for Xue Xue. Just as he was about to flee, he smelled something fresh from his nose and mouth. He immediately operated his cultivation method, and he felt that the spiritual energy of heaven and earth was actually several times more than usual. He was slightly stunned. Buzz, buzz, like thousands of wasps flapping their wings. It was emitted from the bottom of the sea to the west of the Scarlet Island. Quickly look. Sword Ruler Fish Beast. A sharp-eyed disciple was the first to see the sea beast in the surging sea foam. Before his voice fell, many strange sea beast corpses gushed out from the sea foam. Strange. Xiaohua's divine sense swept out again. Unfortunately, the several dozen li of sea area seemed to be confined, and his divine sense couldn't explore at all. It was the same as the sinking of the Great Flag Reef. It was just that the spiritual energy of heaven and earth was being absorbed that day, but now it was actually gushing out. No way. The Great Flag Reef was brought here? Xiaohua looked at Xue Xue in astonishment. Xue Xue was naturally also very surprised. Don't worry. Don't search for the sea beasts. Kuaheng saw that some disciples were eager to give it a try and immediately warned. Then, Kuaheng patted the sea pearl again, and several blood-red flames flew out, hitting various parts of the Scarlet Island. With a wave of spiritual energy, the Scarlet Island's defensive array was activated to the extreme. Everyone stood in the air above the Scarlet Island, quietly looking at the vast sea area in the west. The corpses of various sea beasts were scattered all over, and in the surging waves, it was like a pot of meat soup. Another 5 minutes passed, and a smear of blood red rippled in the entire several dozen li of sea area, reflecting the setting sun. It was incomparably bloody. Ah, sunset. Sunset Island. Kuaheng was so surprised that he couldn't close his mouth and couldn't help but groan. What? Sunset Island? Xiaohua wasn't far from Kuaheng, and when he heard this, he couldn't help but be shocked. Isn't the Scarlet Island Sunset Island? No, Kuaheng said that the Scarlet Island can be called Sunset Island. Just as Xiaohua was thinking, that blood-red color came from under the sea. It was actually a piece of land. Following a loud buzzing sound, a piece of land that was several dozen li darker than the Scarlet Island rose from under the sea. It was to the west of the Scarlet Island, in the direction of the setting sun. After the time it takes to burn a stick of incense, that vibration gradually stopped. Only then did the rising Sunset Island stop. At this time, Xiaohua could already see clearly that the entire Sunset Island was in the shape of a huge oval. Most of it bulged above the sea surface, and it was really similar to the setting sun on the horizon with a small part of it falling below the sea surface. Wasn't this Sunset Island? Things didn't end here. After the sound stopped, a blood-red brilliance flashed on the Sunset Island, and strands after strands, like a string of fireworks, came toward the Scarlet Island. -8. Chapter 2167. Wu, a whimper, which seemed to be from the formation of Blood-Red Island, also emitted a blood-red brilliance. Not only did it resonate with the brilliance of Sunset Island, but it also flowed in the direction of Sunset Island. Fellow Taoist Xiao, help me. Suddenly, Kuaheng hurriedly shouted. What's wrong? Xiaohua heard the voice and looked over. He saw the ocean pearl in Kuaheng's hand overflowing with red light and growing bigger and bigger. Kuaheng urged his magic power to control it, but the ocean pearl actually showed signs of flying away. Kuaheng's magic power surged. Obviously, he had pushed his true essence to the extreme. Damn it, you're a golden core cultivator. Xiaohua cursed in his heart. However, since he was here, he didn't dare to be careless. He hurriedly flew over and waved his big sleeve. The heaven and earth sleeve technique suddenly covered the ocean pearl. Xiaohua was indeed smart. The heaven and earth sleeve technique was really the technique to control the ocean pearl. Wherever Xiaohua's magic power went, the ocean pearl's brilliance flickered slightly. Then, like an obedient child, it slowly shrank. Xiao Hua suddenly had a feeling that if he used the heaven and earth sleeve technique a little more, he could take the ocean pearl from Kua Hang's hands. Xiao Hua's brows swept. Sure enough, Kua Hang's face was extremely ugly, and his eyes were slightly trembling. Ha ha, Xiao Hua waved his sleeve and shrank his magic power by half. He laughed. Fellow Taoist Kua, you're testing me. Kua Hang's eyes suddenly opened. His other sleeve also covered the ocean pearl. His expression calmed down and he forced a smile. Right now, I'm afraid only fellow Taoist Xiao can help me in the entire Blood Red Island. If not for fellow Taoist Zhao's help, this Blood Red Island, Kua Hang didn't say much. He urged his magic power and took the ocean pearl into his hand. Xiao Hua also took the opportunity to withdraw the heaven and earth sleeve technique. Heaven and earth sleeve technique. Kua Yu and the others were very close to Xiao Hua, so they naturally saw it. Everyone's eyes were wild with joy. Ha ha ha, Kua Hang controlled the ocean pearl and laughed. I have good news to tell you. Thanks to fellow Taoist Xiao Hua of the Imperial Thunder Sect for the righteousness of returning my Blood Red Island, no, my Setting Sun Island's long-lost heaven and earth sleeve technique. Woo, everyone cheered. After a while, Kua Hang pointed at the Sunset Island and said, the universe in the sleeve technique has returned to the Sunset Island. The reappearance of the Sunset Island is a joyous occasion for the disciples of the Sunset Island. Seeing that all the disciples were puzzled, Kua Hang said in a clear voice, I'm sure all of you know. My Kua clan is an ancient clan. Although the bloodline is already thin, it is still an ancient bloodline. It is different from those people in the Kue He who are selling dog meat under false pretenses. Ha ha ha. The group of Scarlet Island's disciples laughed loudly. Kua Hang was in an extremely good mood. He waved his hand and said, actually, my Kua clan didn't live on Scarlet Island in the beginning, but on Sunset Island. That is, the island in front of us that looks like the setting sun. At the same time, it was also the most powerful force in the Kue Sea. This Blood Red Island is only a place for the disciples of our Kua family to cultivate and train themselves. At the same time, it is also one of the defensive formations of our Sunset Island. Millions of years ago, or even tens of millions of years ago, the records in the clan are no longer very detailed. This Sunset Island disappeared for some unknown reason. My Kua clan will disappear as well. Only a few disciples who went out were lucky enough to escape and move to this Blood Red Island to live and reproduce. Now that the Sunset Island has reappeared in the Kue Sea, it is the place where my Kua clan's disciples will rise. It is also the beginning of my Kua clan's disciples dominating the Kue Sea. Phew, the group of disciples felt their blood boil after hearing Kua Hang's words. Xiao Hua, who was at the side, was very emotional. Damn it, being an island lord or sect master is really not to be underestimated. Just this ability to talk is more powerful than any cultivation or realm. I'm afraid I don't have a chance in this lifetime. With this ability of mine, I can only deceive little girls and tease little girls. It's really too difficult for this young master to deceive these old men. All right, you all can go now and search for all the sea beasts in the surrounding sea. This is a gift from the ancestors of my Sunset Island. Kua Hang waved his hand and said, also, as a guest of my Sunset Island, fellow Taoist Xiao happened to encounter a joyous occasion of my Sunset Island. I would like to invite fellow Taoist Xiao to be a guest of my Sunset Island and accompany me to the island first. Good, the group of disciples, especially the few late-stage Foundation Establishment disciples, all cheered, let alone Kua Chiao and Kua Rhyming. Fellow Taoist Kua, this is somewhat difficult for me, right? Xiao Hua naturally knew the role of a guest and said with a frown, fellow Taoist Xiao, there is no need for you to do anything for my Sunset Island. Even if the Sunset Island has something to do, they will definitely not invite fellow Taoist Xiao over. Kua Hang immediately transmitted his voice. Sunset Island has just appeared. I want to go to the island with the other elders. Those who are not cultivators of Sunset Island are not allowed to set foot on an island without cultivators. Otherwise, this island will be the first place where cultivators set foot on. I can't completely control Haiju now. If fellow Taoist Xiao doesn't help me, how can I control Sunset Island? While they were talking, several old cultivators flew over from afar. They were all late-stage Foundation establishment and early-stage Golden Core cultivators. Presumably, they were the elders of Blood Ray Island, who were attracted by the appearance of Sunset Island. I see. Xiaohua rolled his eyes and asked again, in that case, if I become a guest of Sunset Island, then I can cultivate all the cultivation techniques of Sunset Island? Kuaheng saw Xiaohua bargaining and said with a bitter smile, of course. However, apart from universe within sleeve and bone tempering technique, what other cultivation techniques do the disciples of the Imperial Thunder sect covet? Didn't fellow Taoist Kwa say before? This bone tempering technique is the foundation of another cultivation technique. This cultivation technique isn't universe within sleeve, right? Xiaohua said proudly. Oh, that. When Kuaheng heard this, a trace of relief appeared on his face. However, at the same time, he was also regretful. He shook his head and said, I spoke too much. However, at that time, I also didn't know that Sunset Island would appear. That cultivation technique should be on Sunset Island. I only saw the records in the clan. As for whether it exists or not, fellow Taoist Xiao can cultivate it. That's not something I can know. Good. Xiaohua immediately nodded. If fellow Taoist Kwa agrees, then I will agree. Can this old man not agree? Kuaheng smiled bitterly as he looked at the group of excited disciples who were heading to the sea area to fish up sea beasts. There were also several elders who were about to arrive. What other choice do I have? Very good. Xiaohua raised his hand, and the two clapped their hands. Immediately, several elders flew over. Kuaheng told them the secret. Those elders were so excited that tears flowed down their old faces. Xiaohua also greeted them. -8. Chapter 2168. Since he was a guest elder, Xiaohua was also a member of the Sunset Island and a disciple of the Imperial Thunder sect, so the elders were very happy. Xiaohua accompanied Kuaheng and prepared to board the Sunset Island. Xue followed Kuaqiao to board the island. At this moment, the entire defensive formation of the Sunset Island was open. The entire island was wrapped in a blood-red brilliance like a cocoon. Naturally, this brilliance was now connected with the light of the bloody red island. Kuaheng flew to the sky above the Sunset Island, patted his hand, and took out a blood-red jade slip from his storage bag. He looked at it carefully and released his divine sense to scan the entire island no less than 10 times. Only then did he come to the east side with some hesitation. Because the blood-red brilliance of the entire Sunset Island was the same, he couldn't see where the formation was. If Kuaheng didn't have the jade slip left by his clan, he probably wouldn't have found this place. It should be here. Kuaheng pointed his hand, but his finger was blocked by the blood-red brilliance. Xiaohua had been frowning since he saw the blood-red brilliance. Now, after hearing Kuaheng's explanation, he shook his head and said, Island Master Kwa, I have a question that I want to ask you. Elder Xiao, please ask. Kuaheng said without hesitation. Elder Xiao is now qualified to know the secret of the Sunset Island. There's no need to hide anything. Xiaohua smiled as he pointed at the restriction and said, Island Master has already said that the Sunset Island has probably disappeared for millions or even tens of millions of years. In other words, the Sunset Island sank into the Kuai-He Sea for at least millions of years. Island Master Kwa, do you think the restriction of the Sunset Island can still be so intact under the Kuai-He Sea? Oh, right. Kuaheng was shocked. He slapped his forehead and said, I was a bit too happy. I actually overlooked this matter. Sure enough, the expressions of the other elders and the few late-stage Foundation establishment disciples also changed. No one knew the power of the Kuai-He Sea better than them. Not to mention the bottom of the sea. Even on the surface of the sea, the restriction of the bloody red island relied on spirit stones to absorb the spiritual chi of heaven and earth to maintain its defense. The Sunset Island sank into the sea. How great was the pressure of the sea? 10,000 years might be enough, but 100,000 years, or even 1,000,000 years later, the restrictions on the Sunset Island would definitely not be intact. It would be normal if it was a dilapidated Sunset Island that had been eroded by the sea, But how could there be nothing strange about the appearance of such an intact sunset island? They were only focused on being happy and thinking about the return of their ancestors' property. They really didn't think about this. What does Elder Xiao mean? Heng's face was gloomy and uncertain. He had asked Hua to take action and become an elder because he wanted to quickly grasp the sunset island in his hands. He was afraid that a long delay would cause more trouble and cause other islands to covet it. Hua shook his head. This is just my guess. I really don't know how to deal with it. Island Master Qua is the master of the island. This matter should be decided by the island master. Heng pondered for a moment before looking at the elders. Obviously, the people of Scarlet Island could not resist the temptation of the Sunset Island. After a few rounds of discussion, they unanimously decided to enter the Sunset Island. Hua was only a guest elder and was only temporarily helping Heng. Seeing this, he did not say anything else. Heng took out the sea pearl and urged it with his spiritual power. The sea pearl suddenly shone with a red light and almost broke free from Heng's control. As Heng used his spiritual power, the sea pearl actually turned into a piece of seaweed and floated toward the restriction of the Sunset Island. However, when the blood-red seaweed fell on the restriction, it did not merge into the restriction as everyone expected. Instead, it fell on a stone wall and slowly slid down. Heng's face was a little ugly. He covered it with his sleeve and used the heaven and earth sleeve to put it away. Then, he took out a jade slip. Obviously, he had misjudged the location. After a long while, Heng hesitantly placed the sea pearl about a foot away from where it was just now. However, to everyone's astonishment, the seaweed that the sea pearl had turned into did not have any reaction. It just slid down. This, not only was Hua puzzled, but the elders and disciples of the Scarlet Island were also puzzled. They looked at each other several times, and their eyes were full of confusion. Heng was a little anxious. He scanned the area with his eyes and placed the sea pearls randomly on top of the restriction that was 10 feet away from him. He hoped that he would be able to touch the formation core that was close to him. Looking at Heng, who was like a headless fly, Hua laughed involuntarily. This half-sphere was huge, probably thousands of feet wide. Heng's attempt was simply like looking for a needle in a haystack. It was simply impossible. Thinking of this, Hua's heart moved. He stretched out his left hand and opened his spiritual eye. In his spiritual eye, the restriction of the entire Sunset Island was like an oval eggshell. On it, there was a thin layer of light curtain that revealed an extremely gorgeous red color. This light curtain was so round and so tight. Where could there be a formation eye for the sea pearl to be placed? This Heng. What the hell is he doing? Hua waved his hand and motioned for a late Foundation establishment disciple to come over. At this time, that disciple was full of admiration for Hua. He flew over and bowed. Yang greets Elder Xiao. May I know why Elder summoned me? This Xiao is not familiar with this Sunset Island. While Island Master Qua is solving the formation here, why don't you take this Xiao to look around? Hua said warmly. Yang looked at the busy and even somewhat impatient Heng and smiled apologetically. This disciple can't help here. If Elder Xiao has an order, this disciple dares not to disobey. Good, Hua nodded. He randomly picked a direction and flew towards the other side of the Sunset Island. Yang naturally nodded to the other elders and also followed Hua. Heng naturally sensed Hua's unusual movements, but he was now a little impatient. In addition, Yang was by Hua's side, so he no longer paid attention to him. He even whispered to the rest of the people to disperse and search for the source of the abnormality. The Sunset Island was huge. Hua circled the entire Sunset Island like a flickering light and passing shadow. Occasionally, he even flew high up in the sky to look at the entire Sunset Island from a bird's-eye view. After the time it took to eat a meal, Hua once again stopped in midair thoughtfully. He turned his head and asked, Yang, this Xiao wants to ask you, do you know anything about the Sunset Island? Do you know why the Sunset Island suddenly appeared from the bottom of the sea? Elder Xiao knows. Yang cupped his hands and said, this junior has never heard of the Sunset Island. However, this junior does know that occasionally, some islands in the Gue He Sea would suddenly be submerged by the sea. The people on the islands would have no way to escape. Of course, there are also reefs and islands that suddenly appear from the bottom of the sea. However, most of them are unknown. Only when people discover them later on will they know. Then, do you think that the position of the sunset island, or should I say, the position will change? Xiao Hua stared at a place not far from him and said very thought-provoking. "Io, that's right." Hua Yang slapped his forehead and said in realization, when reefs and other objects sink into the sea, aren't there enormous whirlwinds and whirlpools? This sunset island will definitely move. Elder Zhao's words are very reasonable. Hehe, since that's the case, then Island Master Kwa is still searching at the original place. Isn't it a bit too much? Xiao Hua said with a smile. Yes, yes. Huayang said anxiously, Elder Xiao, please wait a moment. This disciple will inform Island Master. After saying that, Huayang hurriedly flew away. Not long after, Huahong and the others rushed over. Huaheng's face actually had a trace of shame. When he saw Xiao Hua, he smiled apologetically and said, "This old man has been in the Guihe Sea since young, but I didn't expect to come here." Elder Xiao, a newcomer to the Guihe Sea, actually thought of this. Xiao Hua said with a smile, Island Master Kwa is in the middle of the situation. Naturally, there are some things that you can't see clearly. Moreover, this Xiao has just encountered the sinking of the Great Flag Reef. Naturally, this Xiao has some insights. Good, Huaheng said with a smile. This Kwa will try it right now. Naturally, Xiao Hua couldn't stop at the formation eye that he saw. However, under everyone's speculation, Huaheng tried again for a while and found the formation eye that Haizhu placed on the opposite side of the formation eye. As soon as the seaweed that Haizhu transformed into was placed into the formation eye, a dazzling brilliance burst out. Then, this brilliance spread out from the formation eye like ripples of water. As this brilliance flowed out, the entire blood-colored restriction was like a curtain being opened, revealing the true appearance of Sunset Island. See, what entered Xiao Hua's eyes was a similarly blood-colored island that was extremely similar to Blood Ray Island. However, right in the middle of this Sunset Island, there was an enormous palace built on the island, causing Xiao Hua to suck in a breath of cold air. Of course, Sunset Island was hundreds of feet above the sea surface, and the majestic palace built on it was precisely this palace. My goodness, this palace is probably the same as Haoming City's Xiankong Pavilion. It's also an ancient ruin. Moreover, this ruin is probably real. While Xiao Hua was flabbergasted, the eyes of Huahong and the others flashed with a fervent brilliance. Elder Xiao. While Xiao Hua was in a daze, Huahong called out. Xiao Hua's divine sense swept over and saw that the Haizhu that had just recovered in front of Huahong suddenly shone brightly again and faintly showed signs of flying away. Xiao Hua didn't dare to be negligent. He hurriedly waved his sleeve and covered the Haizhu again. After the Haizhu stabilized, Xiao Hua said curiously, Island Master Kwa, I really don't understand. Island Master Kwa's cultivation and magic power are both stronger than mine. Even this heaven and earth sleeve spell is more exquisite than mine. Why? Hehe, Huaheng said with a wry smile. Controlling this Haizhu requires the complete heaven and earth sleeve spell. It's useless to rely on magic power alone. Although Elder Zhao's cultivation is similar to mine, you've practiced the heaven and earth sleeve spell more than me. Hehe, Xiao Hua suddenly understood and said with a smile, Island Master Kwa, as long as you practice the heaven and earth sleeve spell for a while, you'll definitely surpass me. Why are you in such a hurry? The news of Sunset Island's appearance hasn't spread out yet. However, the tremors in Guihe Sea can't be hidden from people. When Scorching Sun Island, Iceblade Island, Gale Island, or Yinsen Island discover this matter, and my Blood Ray Island's disciples haven't set foot on Sunset Island, they'll have a reason to occupy this island. At that time, even if I completely master the heaven and earth sleeve spell, what's the use? Huaheng explained. -8. Chapter 2169. So that's how it is. Xiao Hua nodded. No wonder Huaheng would rather invite him as a guest elder and teach him a secret technique of the island that even he didn't know about in order to obtain Sunset Island as quickly as possible. What's next? Xiao Hua controlled the ocean pearl and asked, Are we going directly to the island? Not yet. Hua Heng shook his head. This ocean pearl only controls the outer defense of Sunset Island. I still need to use it to obtain the key to the entire forbidden technique of Sunset Island. Oh. Xiao Hua smiled. Then why don't you hurry up? Ahem. Hua Heng coughed awkwardly. I still need Elder Zhao's help. Hua Heng transmitted a few words to Xiao Hua. Xiao Hua frowned and said worriedly, Island Master Hua, are you sure this will be fine? Yes, Hua Heng patted his chest. This is the secret technique of the Sunset Island Master. I am quite confident. All right. Xiao Hua nodded. If anything happens, I won't take responsibility. Ha ha ha, what can happen? Hua Heng smiled. Even if there is a problem, you are a guest elder of Sunset Island. At worst, I will give up my position and let you be the Island Master. Island Master Hua, be careful with your words. Xiao Hua waved his hand. I don't have that idea. However, Xiao Hua still muttered in his heart, Damn it, I'm afraid there really is a problem. Sure enough, Xiao Hua waved his Taoist robe and the ocean pearl flew into the air. Xiao Hua opened his mouth and spat a mouthful of true essence on the ocean pearl. The ocean pearl immediately melted into a red liquid. Next to him, Hua Heng formed a seal with both hands and hit the ocean pearl. Under Hua Heng's control, the ocean pearl gradually turned into a whirlpool. A strange suction force came from the whirlpool and rushed towards Sunset Island. Soon, a strange wave of energy appeared on the Sunset Island. A small, long piece of stone was pulled out from the top of the towering palace, as if it was being pulled out by a great force. It flew towards the ocean pearl's whirlpool. Not long after, the stone flew in front of Xiao Hua and the others. Xiao Hua hesitated and said, Island Master Hua, or elders, you can try it first. I still want to be lazy. All right. Hua Heng had no choice but to wave his sleeve and cast the universe within the sleeve's technique to envelop the stone piece. Unfortunately, the stone piece was not under his control and did not react at all. Elder Xiao, if this old man can't do it, I'm afraid the other elders can't either. Hua Heng smiled bitterly. I'll have to trouble Elder Xiao. This old man trusts you. All right, Xiao Hua was helpless. He waved his hand, and the heaven and earth in the sleeve was activated. The stone piece emitted a faint red color and slowly flew towards Xiao Hua. Although its movement was slow and its brilliance was extremely faint, there was still some reaction. Xiao Hua understood that his heaven and earth sleeve technique had not been completely mastered. If he could master it, it would be a completely different situation. Xiao Hua glanced at Hua Heng and reminded him, I'm going to make a move. Elder Xiao, please. Hua Heng was slightly hesitant, but he still nodded. Xiao Hua bit the tip of his tongue slightly, and a wisp of blood flew out and sprayed on the stone piece. The stone piece shone brightly, and the originally red brilliance actually gave birth to a golden color. Xiao Hua did not dare to be negligent and hurriedly cast a few hand seals. The stone piece immediately restrained its brilliance and actually trembled a little. Go. Xiao Hua pointed his finger, and the stone piece flew in front of Hua Heng. He smiled and said, Island Master Hua, please. All right. Hua Heng let out a long sigh of relief. He also opened his mouth and spat a mouthful of essence blood on the stone piece. He cast a series of hand seals without hesitation, as if he had already recited them several times in his heart. Immediately, a red color flashed at the top of the stone piece and gradually moved down. When the red color submerged 10% of the entire stone piece, Hua Heng raised his voice and said, Elder Xiao, you can take back the essence blood. All right. Xiao Hua looked at Hua Heng with flickering eyes and smiled. He pointed his finger, and the golden light at the bottom of the stone piece flashed slightly and then disappeared. A wisp of blood still seeped out from the bottom of the stone piece and turned into a drop of blood that fell into Xiao Hua's hand. At this time, Hua Heng was truly relieved. He turned to the elders and said, Elders, protect this old man while I refine this island's spirit stone. Yes. The elders and late-stage Foundation establishment disciples of Blood Ray Island all flew close and protected Hua Heng. Kwa Hang sat cross-legged, and his hands were constantly forming hand seals. Various hand seals were cast on the stone piece. The stone piece shook incessantly, and the blood-colored brilliance gradually submerged the entire stone piece. After waiting for 2 hours, Kwa Hung let out a long howl and pointed his finger at the stone tablet. With a crisp pong sound, the stone tablet changed its appearance again. A stone tablet engraved with strange patterns appeared in the air. Kwa Hang scooped up the stone tablet, and it obediently fell into his hand. "Io, something's wrong." Xiao Hua's heart moved slightly. His earlier prediction had indeed come true. Although the stone tablet had been refined by Kwa Hang, Xiao Hua still had a feeling in his heart. He knew that as long as he had the intention, the stone tablet would immediately be moved by him. Kwa Hang's refinement was not complete. "This is also good," Xiao Hua secretly said. "I treat others with sincerity, but I can't guarantee that others will treat me with sincerity. Kwa Hang needs this Xiao now, so naturally, he will give up the position of an elder. If he doesn't need this Xiao in the future, he won't want to take out their so-called clan's secret technique. Who knows, there might be some black hand. With this guarantee, this young master's heart will be at peace." "Oh, this stone tablet seems to have some patterns on it." Xiao Hua's mind was on the stone tablet, so he naturally took a few more glances. He saw that on the stone tablet, there was a giant who was taller than the nearby mountain peak. He held a wooden staff in his hand and was running. In front of him, there was a scarlet flame, which seemed to be the noon sun. However, without waiting for him to take another look, Kwa Hang had already picked up the stone tablet and pointed his hand. From the stone tablet, 8 scarlet rays of light flew out, respectively flying in all directions on the island. Rumble. A blood-red restriction formation rose up on the entire Sunset Island again. The magic power that imprisoned the divine sense disappeared. "You all go and call the disciples to the Sunset Island. Elders, please arrange the chores here properly. 3 months later, my bloody red island will hold a ceremony to change its name to the Sunset Island." Kwa Hang turned his head and gave a few instructions. After everyone left, Kwa Hang said with a smile, "Elder Xiao, this old man's feeling is incomparable. I believe Elder Xiao also knows what this Kwa Hang knows. Let's go. Follow this old man to see the scenery of my Sunset Island." "Hee, Island Master Kwa," Xiao Hua said with a smile, "it's better not to see it. The more I see, the more puzzles I have in my heart." Hearing Xiao Hua's words, Kwa Hang nodded with a puzzled expression and said, "Exactly. This old man originally thought that there would be many white bones on the Sunset Island, the remains of my Kwa clan's ancestors from 1,000,000 years ago. However, on the entire Sunset Island, other than 3 strange white bones in the main hall, there isn't a single corpse on the entire Sunset Island." -8. Chapter 2170. Yes, there seems to be some spirit fields protected by restrictions in the back hall. There's nothing in there either. It seems that all the spirit grasses have withered. If there are a few 100-year-old spirit grasses, Island Master Kwa will be even happier. Xiao Hua continued. Anyway. Kwa Hang chuckled. Although it's a bit strange, Sunset Island is the foundation of my Kwa family. I can't not move here. Of course I congratulate Island Master Kwa. Xiao Hua said with a smile. However, I'm more concerned about that cultivation method. Don't worry, Elder Xiao. Kwa Hang raised his eyebrows and said with a smile, the restriction around that cultivation method is intact. I've already sensed it. When we reach the main hall, I'll take Elder Xiao there. Great. Xiao Hua cupped his hands and said, Thank you, Island Master Kwa. No need to thank me. The entire Sunset Island was given to me by Elder Xiao. I'm the one who should thank you. Kwa Hang pulled Xiao Hua's robe and flew into the main hall. Standing at the entrance of the main hall, which was much taller than him, Xiao Hua felt like he was an ant. It wasn't just an impression, it was a kind of aura, a kind of majesty that came from the main hall. Looking at the 3 words, Sunset Palace, that were similar to the inscriptions on the main hall, Xiao Hua became thoughtful. These words were similar to the ones he saw in the Zhong family of Yun City. In the ancient times, could it be? There were other words besides the green seal script, the inscriptions on the armor, and the golden seal script? Xiaohua was a bit confused. Otherwise, where did the current cultivation words come from? Elder Xiao, do you recognize these 3 words? Kuaheng glanced at Xiaohua's eyes and said with a smile. Xiaohua's heart moved and he said, "Of course I don't. However, besides Sunset Island, what else could it be?" Ha ha ha, Kuaheng shook his head and said, "These 3 words are Sunset Palace." Elder Xiao, you're wrong. Then he sighed and said, "It's a pity that the jade slip that recorded these words wasn't left behind on Blood Ray Island. After I move into Sunset Island, I'll search carefully. There must be a jade slip left behind on the island." Okay, Xiaohua saw that Kuaheng didn't hide it and felt very gratified. He followed Kuaheng into the main hall. Everything in the main hall was huge. There were huge pillars, huge stone chairs, and huge tables. It was several times bigger than the main hall of the Misty Clouds sect. However, there were 3 skeletons on the ground. Only one of them belonged to a cultivator. The other 2 clearly didn't belong to cultivators. The 2 skeletons were 10 times bigger than Kuaheng, and each skeleton had 4 legs, each of which was as long as Kuaheng's legs. There was even a corpse with a tail that was longer than its body. If it weren't for the skeleton of that cultivator, Xiaohua could still regard the other 2 as body cultivators like Kuaheng. However, compared with the skeleton of a cultivator, the difference was obvious. Demonic beast? Xiaohua naturally saw it long ago, and he thought so at first. However, there was a storage pouch beside that cultivator skeleton, and there were also 2 storage pouches beside the other 2 skeletons. It was just that these 2 storage pouches were somewhat different from the cultivator's storage pouch. This old man will take a look first. Kuaheng glanced at Xiaohua and waved his hand. The cultivator's storage pouch flew into his hand. Huh. When Kuaheng scanned it with his divine sense, he couldn't help but be stunned. What's wrong? Xiaohua asked curiously. Hee, Elder Xiao, take a look for yourself. Kuaheng waved his hand and threw the storage pouch to Xiaohua. Xiaohua took it and scanned it with his divine sense. He immediately understood. The storage pouch was a blur. The arrays inside had long been destroyed. There was nothing left behind, and he couldn't see anything from inside. While Xiaohua was looking at the storage pouch, Kuaheng took the other 2 storage pouches and scanned them with his divine sense. He then threw them on the ground. Obviously, the arrays inside were damaged. Huh, what's this? Kuaheng's gaze fell on the white bone with the tail. He saw a dark ring on the white bone of the forelimb. It was about 4 fingers wide and seemed to be an armband. Kuaheng reached out and wanted to pick up the armband. However, just as he touched the armband touched the white bone. This simple touch shook the white bone into powder. What shocked Kuaheng even more was that the remaining white bone also turned into powder with the vibration. Oh, what's going on? Xiaohua naturally saw this abnormality and couldn't help but be surprised. Obviously, this white bone seemed to have gone through millions or tens of millions of years. How could it become so fragile? Could it be? Xiaohua guessed. The ancestors of the Sunset Island have all turned into white powder? Huh, this is strange. Kuaheng picked up the armband and scanned it with his divine sense. 2 things appeared in his hands. Xiaohua's gaze swept over them, and a strange expression appeared on his face. Because in Kuaheng's hands, one was a token, and the other was a relic. On the token was a ferocious snake's head, and the relic was the size of a fist. Elder Xiao, Kuaheng looked at the token in his hand and said with a smile, "This seems to be what you want, right?" This is very strange. Xiaohua touched his nose and said with a bitter smile, "This Xiao can swear that this Xiao is really just curious." Ha ha ha, Elder Xiao, look at you. How can this old man not believe you? Kuaheng didn't doubt him at all and threw the token in his hand to Xiaohua. Thank you, Island Master. Xiaohua took it and looked at the brand new token. It didn't have the slightest rust, and he couldn't see any clues. He waved his hand and put it into the space. This thing seems to be a storage item. Unfortunately, the array inside has also collapsed. Just now, this old man only had time to take out these 2 things. Kuaheng didn't regard himself as an outsider and showed the armband and the relic to Xiao Hua again. Xiao Hua followed his words and looked inside. Sure enough, the inside was also a piece of chaos. There was nothing inside. He looked at the fist-sized relic. It was crystal clear, and there was a layer of milky white brilliance inside. It seemed to be a cross-legged Buddha statue. Island Master Kwa, if this thing is useless to you, this Xiao? Xiao Hua asked tentatively. Elder Xiao, you can take it. Kwa Heng waved his hand and said, this thing doesn't belong to my Sunset Island. This Kwa is also not interested. If you want it, you can take it. However, if you find something related to my Sunset Island, please tell this old man. Haha, of course. Xiao Hua smiled as he placed the armband into his bosom. He also placed the Sarira into his space and took the 3 storage pouches. These 2 skeletons. I'm afraid they can't move at all. Kwa Heng squatted down and looked at the skeletons and whispered to Xiao Hua. This Xiao also thinks so. Xiao Hua nodded. Huff. Kwa Heng raised his mouth and blew a breath of air. Hua, as the wind blew. The 2 skeletons collapsed and turned into 2 pieces of white powder. Alas, ashes to ashes, dust to dust. Kwa Heng waved his Taoist robe. As the breeze blew, 3 piles of white powder rose up and soon drifted in the air, leaving no trace behind. Ouch! Xiao Hua's eyes narrowed as if he thought of something. However, before he could think carefully, another wave of serious palpitations suddenly came. Could it be that this warning sign didn't appear on Sunset Island? Xiao Hua was shocked. It seems that there is still an unknown danger. Island Master Kwa, Xiao Hua said somewhat anxiously. This Xiao suddenly thought of something and is in a hurry to leave. What is the cultivation method that Island Master Kwa is talking about? Where is it on Sunset Island? This Xiao wants to take a look first. If there is no fate, this Xiao will take a look and leave. There is no need to be in such a hurry, right? Kwa Heng said curiously, Sunset Island has just appeared. There will be an island establishment ceremony in 3 months. Fellow Taoist Xiao is a guest of Sunset Island and should attend. Xiao Hua shook his head. It's not that this Xiao doesn't want to stay. This is no small matter. This Xiao can't wait. All right. Kwa Heng clapped his hand and took the stone tablet in his hand. After he immersed his divine sense in it, he pointed his finger. A trace of blood flashed on the stone tablet. It was a rumbling sound coming from the inner hall in the distance. Kwa Heng's face lit up and he said with a smile, this old master is fortunate to have not failed you. This is one of the forbidden areas of Sunset Island. Those who are not elders or above are not allowed to enter. Since fellow Taoist Xiao is a guest elder, you can naturally enter. Please. All right. Xiao Hua knew that this was not the time to be polite, so he nodded and followed Kwa Heng into the inner hall. Could it be that this Kwa Heng has bad intentions towards this young master? Xiao Hua was somewhat suspicious as he flew. However, the problem was that this stone tablet had gone through Xiao Hua's blood, so there was a trace of gold left in it. This trace of gold was enough for Xiao Hua to control the stone tablet when Kwa Heng controlled it to attack Xiao Hua. In other words, Kwa Heng couldn't threaten Xiao Hua. What kind of warning sign is that? Xiao Hua was suddenly shocked. Could it be that Sunset Island will sink again? However, looking at Kwa Heng's excited appearance, even if he told Kwa Heng that Sunset Island would sink again, Kwa Heng definitely wouldn't believe him. Elder Xiao, it's right here. After flying past a few restrictions and a few corridors that looked like a maze, Kwa Heng pointed at a small house that was only 3 meters tall and said, inside the small house is the most important place where the cultivation methods of my Sunset Island are recorded. However, at this point, Kwa Heng was somewhat hesitant. Are there any taboos? Xiao Hua asked with a frown. If this old master says it now, Elder Xiao, I'm afraid that this old master will think that this old master is deceiving Elder. Kwa Heng smiled bitterly. It's probably because this old master didn't say it clearly earlier. It doesn't matter. Island Master Kwa, please say it. Xiao Hua smiled. Kwa Heng said embarrassedly, earlier Elder Xiao asked what cultivation method it was. Actually, this old master also doesn't know, because this forbidden area has some strange rules. This Xiao is even more curious. Xiao Hua's curiosity was piqued. Yes, Every Sunset Island disciple above the rank of Elder can enter this forbidden area to comprehend the bone-tempering technique after mastering it. Heng thought for a moment and said very seriously, however, this opportunity only comes once, and it's only for a day. No matter if you comprehend it or not, you have to come out after a day and a half. After you come out, no matter how much you comprehend, you can't teach it to other disciples, and you can't tell others what you've comprehended. If you like this work, you are welcome to come to Chidian. Come to vote for it. -8. Chapter 2171. Oh my! Xiaohua almost stuck out his tongue. This rule is too strange. Aren't the seniors of the Sunset Island afraid that this cultivation method will be lost? I don't know either. Heng shook his head. I haven't completed the bone tempering technique yet, so I didn't think about it before. Now, I have to consider when I can enter after completing the bone tempering technique, so that I won't waste this one day and one night opportunity. All right, Xiaohua muttered. I don't know when I can come to the Guihisi in the future, so I'll go in and take a look first. Elder Xiao, actually, your body refining technique has already surpassed this old man's. If you continue to comprehend the bone tempering technique of my Sunset Island, you will have a chance to comprehend this secret technique in the future. Why are you in such a hurry? Heng was sincerely thinking for Xiaohua. Don't, Xiaohua thought. If my premonition is correct, the Sunset Island may sink again in the next few days. I'd better hurry and take a look first. Hee, I'm very curious. If I know about this, I'll definitely go in and take a look. Otherwise, I wouldn't have collected those tokens of unknown origin. Xiaohua said while touching his nose. All right. Heng pointed his finger at the stone tablet. With a rumbling sound, a stone door rose from the inside of the small house. Elder Xiao, go in. After one day and one night, the stone door will naturally open. Elder Xiao, you have to come out immediately. Otherwise, I won't be able to open the stone door unless there's no life in the small house. I know. Xiaohua nodded and was about to walk through the stone door when he turned around and said, Island Master, the Sunset Island has just risen from the sea. Who knows if it will sink again? Island Master should be prepared. Hee, don't worry, Elder Xiao. Heng smiled mysteriously. How can I not know? If there's any movement, the island guarding spirit stone will definitely inform me. Of course. Xiaohua patted his forehead and said with a smile, I don't control this spirit stone, so I don't know its magical uses. Then, Xiaohua walked into the small house with a big smile. Heng saw Xiaohua's figure disappear, and the big rock fell down. He didn't waste any more time and turned around to fly away. The Sunset Island had just appeared. He had too many things to arrange. Xiaohua's matter was really insignificant. When Xiaohua entered the hut, his divine sense was immediately confined, unable to leave his body at all. His gaze swept across the four walls inside, but he didn't find anything special. He only felt that there seemed to be a strange magic power fluctuation inside the walls, which should be a kind of strange restriction. And Xiaohua's eyes swept across the room, and when he saw that the four walls were filled with these words, he unconsciously relaxed his brows. Because the handwriting was the same as the Sunset Palace engraved outside the main hall. It was similar to the inscriptions on the armor, and it was also a type that Xiaohua was familiar with. Great! Xiaohua couldn't help but rejoice at what he had done in Zhongling Mountain Villa. If he didn't care about Zhong Tianyao life and death that day, and only took the 2 pieces of gold foil away, not only would he not get refining the world, he wouldn't get the 5 elements refining technique, and it would be even more impossible for him to know the words similar to the inscription of armor. Then, when he came here, he could only waste one day and one night in vain. Giving spiritual herbs to others, leaving a lingering fragrance in my hands. Xiaohua sighed. Old friends really don't deceive me. However, Xiaohua's sigh hadn't finished yet. His gaze swept across a wall, where the starting point of the cultivation method was. He unconsciously stood on the spot, his mouth still muttering. What? Celestial body empowerment technique? How is there such a cultivation method? However, this still wasn't what shocked Xiaohua the most. By the time he finished reciting the general outline, his 2 eyes were shining. A kind of fervor, a kind of absolute disbelief, was revealed on his face, which was practically unperturbed by favor or disgrace. Is there really such a miraculous arcane effort? But pouring all kinds of spiritual energy into the body and forcibly raising the magic power? Not afraid of any bottleneck, not afraid of any chi deviation? No wonder the bone tempering technique is only the foundation. Without the bone tempering technique as the foundation, the body would have collapsed long ago. No wonder this secret technique can't be spread outside. If half a word was leaked out, wouldn't it have set off a reign of terror in the Dawn Rain continent long ago? The simplest thing is, this Sunset Island would have been the one to suffer the most. Right. Why didn't Kwahang make me swear a hard oath? Could it be that he knows I won't spread it? Or maybe he doesn't think I can understand it? Xiaohua pondered again. Forget it. Who cares? Hurry up and comprehend it. There's only one day and one night. Time is tight. Thinking, Xiaohua sat cross-legged, hurriedly reading from the first sentence of the Celestial Body Empowerment Technique. Soon, one day and one night passed. When the huge stone of the hut rose, Xiaohua's figure walked out of the hut with joy in his eyes, seemingly with a kind of doubt. Elder Xiao, please follow this old man's guidance. Kwahang's voice sounded in Xiaohua's ear. This old man is in the main hall right now, and has no time to come and pick up Elder. Well said. Xiaohua understood that this was done by Kwahang using the island guarding spirit stone. He turned his head to look at the hut that was closed again, and followed Kwahang's guidance to the main hall. At this time, the main hall was already in order. Several elders and dozens of disciples were sitting in an orderly manner. Kwahang sat at the head, while Shui and Kuaqiao sat at the side. When Shui saw Xiaohua appear, a smile appeared on her face. Obviously, she had been worried for one day and one night. Elder Xiao, did you get anything? Kwahang smiled. Ha ha ha, Island Master is testing me. Xiaohua smiled but didn't answer. Ha ha ha, yes. Kwahang nodded. Presumably, Elder Xiao is also wondering why I didn't make you swear a hard oath, right? Yes, that's right. Xiaohua smiled. Elder Xiao, you don't know, this is a kind of charm of my Kwa family. Kwahang smiled. As long as you enter that hut, you will be restricted by the charm, and there is no need for any hard oath. Ah, I see. Xiaohua smiled bitterly. He didn't blame Kwahang for not telling him that day. He knew that even if he knew the reason, he would still have to enter. As for the charm, was Xiaohua afraid? That day, the charm of the disciples of Sunset Island was probably not too important. As for Xiaohua's doubts, it was a warning sign. Even now, he still hadn't found any clues. Elder Xiao, please sit. Kwahang waved his hand. This old man still has some things to discuss with the elders. When Xiaohua heard this, he immediately cupped his hands. Island Master Kwa, I already told you yesterday that I really have something that I can't avoid. AI, okay? Kwahang seemed to have known that Xiaohua would say this. He clapped his hand and took out a token, flying in front of Xiaohua. This is my Sunset Island's token. Elder Xiao, please keep it well. Okay, this is no problem. If Sunset Island has any problems in the future, please inform me. Xiaohua took the token and said bluntly. -8. Chapter 2172. Great. Kwahang was overjoyed when he saw that Xiaohua didn't decline and even said such words. He opened another storage pouch and handed it over with a smile. This is the harvest of my Sunset Island disciples yesterday. Elder Xiao, you don't have to be polite. Good. Xiaohua took it and cupped his hands. I don't dare to stay any longer. Island Master Kwa, elders, I'm really sorry. Xiaohua raised his eyes to signal Shui. Shui immediately got up and followed Xiaohua out of the hall. Kwahang was quite surprised to see Xiaohua so anxious. He naturally thought of the secret technique in the small house on Sunset Island. Unfortunately, because of the power of the talisman, Kwahang didn't dare to ask more. He also knew that Xiaohua would absolutely not say. Therefore, Kwahang was somewhat hesitant. Yes, now that Kwahang had the island guarding spirit stone, the entire Sunset Island's forbidden technique was under his control. This day and night, Xiao Hua did his best to comprehend the immortal body bestowment technique and didn't have time to be distracted. Kuaheng also didn't idle. Kuaheng didn't pay attention to the relocation of the Scarlet Island disciples. Instead, he put all his attention on refining the island-guarding spirit stone. Yesterday's spell was just a simple control of the island-guarding spirit stone with the help of Xiao Hua's Heaven and Earth sleeve. As for the real control, it would be as natural as the palm of one's hand. After all, Kuaheng was only a gold core cultivator. Should I do something? Kuaheng's heart inevitably wavered. After all, Xiao Hua was a disciple of the Imperial Thunder sect. Kuaheng was really worried. However, just as Kuaheng's fingers moved slightly, as if he was going to touch his storage pouch, Xiao Hua suddenly turned around and said with a smile, "Island Master Kua, is there anything else you haven't told me?" Kuaheng was startled, and sweat appeared on his back. He waved his hand and said, "No. This old man thought that you left in such a hurry and felt really apologetic. I wanted to see if there was anything in the storage pouch." "Ha ha ha. Island Master Kua, no need to be polite. This Xiao is already a guest of Sunset Island. I'll have plenty of opportunities to come again in the future." Xiao Hua, who released his Buddhist consciousness, laughed loudly. His eyes flashed a trace of seriousness, and he quickly walked out. Forget it. Kuaheng didn't think that Xiao Hua could see through his actions or intentions. "I'm afraid this is God's will. This old man will believe in Xiao Hua." Immediately, Kuaheng, along with several elders and a dozen disciples, followed Xiao Hua out of the main hall. Seeing that Sunset Island was busy, the disciples slowly moved all their belongings to Sunset Island. Xiao Hua was nervous and didn't dare to stay for a long time. He casually said a few polite words to Kuaheng and the others, then took Shue's hand and flew towards the Dawn Rain continent. The two of them flew for an hour in one breath. Only when they saw an uninhabited island in front of them did Xiao Hua slowly descend. He felt that the throbbing in his heart had somewhat calmed down. "Husband, why are you in such a hurry?" Shue asked curiously. "Are you rushing back to the Imperial Thunder sect?" Hee. Xiao Hua sensed again and found that the warning sign had disappeared. He immediately said with a mischievous smile, "Wife, there are many people on Sunset Island." Bah! Shue's divine sense swept over and found that there were no traces of people nearby. Her face slightly reddened, and her body gradually heated up. She reached out and pinched Xiao Hua's arm, saying angrily, "You impatient little husband." Just as Xiao Hua was about to move, a cold feeling suddenly emerged from his back. It was as if he was being stared at by a poisonous snake. An incomparable sense of danger caused his heart to swell and burst. That restless feeling immediately disappeared like a gust of wind. Xiao Hua didn't dare to be negligent. His figure flashed and he immediately flew away with Shue, flying straight towards the depths of QC. Husband, what are you doing?" Shue looked at Xiao Hua's deathly pale face and the surrounding scenery that was rapidly retreating. Xiao Hua actually used the bright thunder escape to escape at the fastest speed. Shue was instantly shocked. Like Xiao Hua, the beautiful thoughts in her heart instantly disappeared. Feeling Shue's body stiffen, Xiao Hua knew that Shue already understood the situation. He used all his magic power and didn't even have time to speak. "Husband," Shue whispered, "did you encounter an enemy?" How could Xiao Hua speak? Right now, his back was covered in goosebumps. He felt as if there was a snake chasing after him. And yet, even when he released his divine sense, he still couldn't find any clues. In fact, that feeling was getting more and more serious, as if this threat was getting closer and closer. After another half cup of tea's time, Xiao Hua suddenly stopped in the air and let go of Shue. He said anxiously, "Wife, husband can't talk to you anymore. There seems to be a fatal threat approaching. Husband will do his best to escape. You have to know that husband's senses have always been very sharp. Husband can't bring you into this whirlpool." As he spoke, Xiao Hua clapped his hand, took out the token of Sunset Island, and handed it to Shue. "Take this token of Sunset Island back and ask Kuaheng to send disciples to escort you back to the thunder-controlling sect. Even if they can't go, they have to send you to Haoming City or Yun City. In short, ask Yu Qian or Zhong Tianyao to send disciples to escort you back to the thunder-controlling sect. Tell them that husband has some urgent matters to attend to. When husband is done, I will definitely thank them. Then, he didn't dare to say another word. He raised his head to identify the direction and flew towards the north of QC. Okay. Xue Xue accepted the token from the Sunset Island. Her tears had already fallen. She knew that her cultivation was too shallow. She couldn't help Xiaohua at all. Instead, she had become a burden to Xiaohua. Xiaohua had abandoned her and traveled alone. It seemed very heartless, but in fact, it was the greatest protection for her. Xue Xue fiercely bit her pearly white teeth, and a trace of blood was left on them. But then, Xue Xue seemed to wake up and said loudly, "Husband, don't be afraid. This time you will definitely." However, Xiaohua's bright thunder escape was so fast. In just a moment, it was about to disappear. There was only a vague figure in the distance. How could Xiaohua hear it? How did Xue Xue know that Xiaohua would definitely be fine this time? It's really strange. Xue Xue identified the direction and was about to fly in the direction of Sunset Island. However, her heart stirred and she put away the token. She remained calm and unruffled in the midst of chaos. She lightly floated up and flew in the direction Xiaohua had come from. While flying, Xue Xue greedily looked at the sea. Occasionally, she would descend and seem to check the sea beasts in the sea. In less than the time it takes for an incense stick to burn, a powerful divine sense suddenly swept over from afar and swept over the entire range of 100 miles. That divine sense was so powerful that Xue Xue couldn't determine the cultivation of the person who came. However, Xue Xue immediately locked onto that person. After a moment, a figure turned into a rainbow and flew over from afar. Ah, a nascent soul cultivator. Xue Xue slightly sensed and immediately felt as if her scalp was about to explode. She hastily bowed and stood in midair. She didn't dare to raise her head and respectfully welcomed the person. She really couldn't think of when Xiaohua provoked a nascent soul cultivator and was actually being hunted down. This person was naturally Changbai sect's Taoist Jingru. Taoist Jingru only paused for a moment. Her gaze swept over Xue Xue, and she immediately moved away. Her figure didn't stay any longer and turned into a rainbow, flying in the direction Xiaohua flew towards. Xue Xue waited until Taoist Jingru flew far away before she finally relaxed. Her heart was beating wildly, and she was somewhat apprehensive. She was also very bold. Fortunately, Taoist Jingru didn't know that there was a female cultivator beside Xiaohua. Otherwise, Xue Xue might really be in danger. Of course, since Xue Xue dared to test Taoist Jingru like this, she probably had something in her heart to rely on. Not to mention Xue Xue returning to Sunset Island, Xiaohua had been flying all the way. In his heart, he had already cursed Taoist Jingru to the heavens. If cursing could be used as a magic technique, Taoist Jingru would have long been riddled with holes by Xiaohua's curses. Which family's child is this? Why is he so insensible? He didn't even say hello and just chased after me. In the end, Xiaohua really didn't have the heart to curse. He very helplessly thought to himself as he flew away with all his might. Where's this guy? Is there something wrong with this tracking technique of mine? While Xiaohua was bewildered, Taoist Jingru was also puzzled. They had already chased him to the depths of the Kueha Sea, so why hadn't they found any traces of Xiaohua? Moreover, according to Taoist Jingru's sea chart, Xiaohua seemed to be heading towards the northwest of the Kueha Sea. Oh my, could it be that this guy actually knows that this old man is chasing after him? Could it be this guy's flying technique is very fast? Taoist Jingru suddenly came to a realization. -8. Chapter 2173. Previously, although Taoist Jingru chased Xiaohua to the Kuehi Sea using a secret technique, he didn't put Xiaohua in his eyes. Moreover, Xiaohua's position didn't change at all. Therefore, Taoist Jingru chased after him slowly and didn't use much magic power. Now, Taoist Jingru discovered that Xiaohua's position suddenly changed and seemed to be far away from him. That flying speed was absolutely terrifying for a foundation establishment cultivator. He couldn't help but reconsider the problem of how to kill Xiao Hua. I absolutely can't let Xiao Hua go ashore. Taoist Jingru narrowed his eyes. The magic power in his body suddenly surged, and he struck out with a spell. A faint red shadow appeared in front of him, and he sped up again. Taoist Jingru's flying speed increased again and unexpectedly intercepted Xiao Hua horizontally. Why does it feel so intense? Xiao Hua was alarmed. His magic power had already been pushed to the limit. The true essence in his body wasn't little consumed during this period of time. The true essence generated by the mental cultivation method was gradually unable to keep up with the consumption of the bright thunder escape. What should I do? Xiao Hua also released his Buddhist sense. Unfortunately, although his Buddhist sense had a much larger range than his divine sense, it still couldn't discover Taoist Jingru. Moreover, in his Buddhist sense, all he could see was the boundless sea. There was no land at all. Xiao Hua could only rely on the lightning escape technique to escape. Earth escape, wood escape, and fire escape were all useless. If only there was a water escape technique. Xiao Hua was somewhat rueful. Just as he was thinking, his Buddhist sense suddenly encountered an extremely powerful divine sense. Nascent soul cultivator. In an instant, Xiao Hua determined the cultivation level of the newcomer. When did I offend a nascent soul cultivator? Xiao Hua's face was pale. At this moment, Taoist Jingru's divine sense seemed to have sensed something and immediately probed towards his Buddhist sense like a tentacle. How could Xiao Hua dare to let his Buddhist sense stay? He immediately withdrew his hand and formed a water-dispelling technique, plunging into the Kuei Sea. However, in merely a moment, Xiao Hua came out of the Kuei Sea again and cursed inwardly. Damn it! This young master's brain is dizzy from being chased by that damned nascent soul cultivator. This young master's flying speed in the Kuei Sea can't compare to flying in the air. I actually want to escape in the Kuei Sea. Won't be caught by that bastard soon? Immediately after, Xiao Hua flicked his hand and took out a bright flower pill. He consumed it without the slightest hesitation and did his best to activate his mental cultivation technique to refine it. He once again increased the speed of the bright thunder evasion. Xiao Hua's divine senses once again. SSS once again. He's sense. He, S's was a lot closer to him. Not SSS, S's. TSSSS, T's. His, S have test. SSSS, S cheese. SSTons his TS2s to T2s. Ets to T, S, the rich spiritual chi of heaven and earth quickly evaporated. Right at this moment, Xiao Hua's heart was moved again. Sunset Island's imbuement technique was precisely to directly inject endless heaven and earth spirit chi into the body, borrowing the valiant body to convert the heaven and earth spirit chi into true chi, and then inject it into the meridians. The efficiency of this conversion was related to the cultivator's fleshly body. If one's physical body was strong enough, they would naturally be able to convert more heaven and earth spiritual chi. Otherwise, if too much heaven and earth spiritual chi entered one's body, one's physical body could even explode. The disciples of the Sunset Island had to practice the bone tempering technique first. They could only practice the body imbuing technique after their bodies were fully developed. And Xiao Hua is not as good as Kuaheng. He has long practiced the bone tempering technique, and his bones have already been refined to one color. At this time, using the immortal baptism technique is just right for him to bring out the best in each other. As soon as Xiao Hua used the body imbuing technique, the earth spirit chi of heaven and earth that was wrapped in the innermost layer of his body immediately entered his fleshly body. Under the urging of Xiao Hua's cultivation method, strands of spiritual chi were refined and poured into his meridians. Although Xiao Hua was a beginner, the amount of spiritual chi he could refine at the beginning wasn't much, and the amount of true essence he could increase was even less. But now that he was being chased to the point of urgency, this strand of true essence could be urged to fly. At a critical moment, this strand of true essence could be used to save his life. After another hour, Taoist Jingru caught up a bit closer. Xiao Hua could almost use his Buddhist sense to perceive that Taoist Jing Ru's divine sense was already only a few dozen feet away from him. This won't do. I can't keep flying like this. This guy seems to know that this young master wants to fly towards the Dawn Rain continent. Xiao Hua made a prompt decision, turning his head and flying towards the interior of the Guihe Sea. Xiao Hua's move actually caught Taoist Jingru somewhat unprepared. Although he had some secret techniques, he couldn't always check. By the time he checked again, Xiao Hua had already flown extremely far away. How did this guy know that this old man was chasing after him? Xiao Hua's change of direction made Taoist Jingru even more aware. However, he also became even more confused. If he's a nascent soul cultivator, this old man would still suspect that he has some magical ability. But a foundation establishment cultivator, how is that possible? Why think so much? Capture him and directly search his soul. If there's something good, this old man's anger will be appeased. If there's nothing good, this old man's face will be restored. Taoist Jingru had long regarded Xiao Hua as a dead man. However, Taoist Jingru chased for more than 2 hours. Xiao Hua was like a slippery loach. Within the range of his secret technique, he seemed to already be near, but his divine sense couldn't find him. Moreover, whenever Taoist Jingru had some certainty, Xiao Hua would suddenly change direction. Damn it! Taoist Jingru also cursed. He really didn't expect that killing a trifling foundation establishment cultivator would be so troublesome. After thinking for a moment, Taoist Jingru's eyes flashed with a trace of cold light. He withdrew his divine sense, slowed down his flying speed, and put part of his magic power into the secret technique. Sure enough, the direction indicated by the faint blood color was especially messy at first. One moment it was east, the next it was west, and it was even going up. However, after half a meal's time, it said that it was stable, and it kept going in the direction of the Dawn Rain continent. Hee. Taoist Jingru saw that the fish had taken the bait, and a cruel smile hung on his face. He put away the secret technique, aroused his magic power, and intercepted Xiao Hua's direction. As for Xiao Hua, when he released his Buddhist sense, he didn't encounter Taoist Jingru's divine sense. Knowing that he had shaken off Taoist Jingru, he felt relieved and took advantage of this opportunity to quickly fly in the direction of the Dawn Rain continent. However, just when Xiao Hua was slightly proud of himself and felt that he had shaken off the other party, that feeling of dread that had previously disappeared because of Taoist Jingru's appearance once again attacked him. Good heavens, could it be that there's another nascent soul cultivator chasing after this young master? Xiao Hua was completely stupid. One nascent soul cultivator was already enough for him to suffer. If there was another, wouldn't he be caught like a turtle in a jar? -8. Chapter 2174. This nascent soul cultivator might be related to the great expert who sealed this young master's middle Dantian and Niwen palace. What about the other nascent soul cultivators? Xiao Hua speculated inwardly, but his figure was dissatisfied. He hastily turned around and flew towards Guihe Sea again. Xiao Hua's wild guess was naturally wrong, but Taoist Jingru missed. When he estimated the difference, he suddenly released his divine sense and cast it like a net in the sea, wanting to lock onto Xiao Hua with his divine sense. Contrary to Taoist Jingru's expectations, he missed again. Taoist Jingru was really ashamed and angry, so he had no choice but to use his secret technique again. When Taoist Jingru saw it clearly, he almost vomited blood. The cunning Xiao Hua actually flew towards the depths of Guihe Sea again. Based on Xiao Hua's previous speed, Taoist Jingru was actually quite far away from him. This old man is going to waste time with you. Taoist Jingru laughed from extreme anger. The spiritual energy in Guihe Sea is thinner the deeper you go. This old man has a nascent soul, but what do you have? I'm afraid that before you reach the depths of Guihe Sea, the medicinal pills in your storage bag will be used up. This old man doesn't believe that even if this old man chases you slowly from behind, I won't be able to catch up. I won't be able to capture you. This old man will definitely use a secret technique to torture you 1,000 times. This old man wants to see what the origin of your Imperial Thunder School's lightning evasion technique is. Kueha's sea was vast and boundless, so it naturally stretched as far as the eye could see. However, Xiaohua was, after all, over 100 li away from Taoist Jingru. Moreover, Xiaohua deliberately lowered his altitude and flew close to the sea surface. Taoist Jingru really couldn't see Xiaohua with his naked eyes or other magical abilities. Of course, Taoist Jingru was a nascent soul cultivator, so he naturally had magical abilities and magic techniques that Xiaohua didn't know about. Unfortunately, Taoist Jingru couldn't even see Xiaohua's face and couldn't catch up. All his magic techniques were also empty talk. This was also one of the reasons for Taoist Jingru's shame and anger. Because Taoist Jingru had to rely on a secret technique to determine Xiaohua's position, he couldn't use all his magic power on a flying technique. Moreover, Taoist Jingru wasn't good at flying techniques, and this rainbow flying technique consumed a lot of magic power. So much so that he didn't bring his flying magic tool with him. All of these coincidences created an awkward situation for Taoist Jingxi when she was chasing after Xiaohua. Right now, Taoist calm consideration's only hope is that Xiaohua's magic power is exhausted. Without spirit pills to replenish his true essence, his speed will drop. Or perhaps Taoist Jingru's divine sense could lock onto Xiaohua. Taoist Jingru wouldn't need to use a secret technique and could pursue Xiaohua with all his might. However, dozens of days quickly passed, and the distance between the two of them didn't change at all. Xiaohua was still recklessly rushing around like a headless fly. Taoist Jingxi also frequently used secret techniques to intercept Xiaohua from behind. Although there were mountain-like tsunamis, although there were lightning flashes and thunder rolls in the dark night, although sea beasts occasionally emerged from time to time, and even experienced cultivators encountered them, Xiaohua's magic power wasn't as exhausted as Taoist Master Jingxi thought. Moreover, Xiaohua's cultivation had actually increased extremely quickly due to Taoist Jingru's constant pressure. It was much faster than his usual cultivation speed. Motherfucker, this is my fate. Xiaohua used the lightning evasion, and his flowing cloud movement technique also steadily improved. His flying speed was clearly faster than before. He couldn't help but secretly grumble. That year, under the pursuit of 4 Foundation establishment cultivators, I suddenly rushed to the 10th level of Qi refining. Today, I'm being chased by a nascent soul cultivator. This guy is even more powerful than those 4. Since he's following orders, even if he doesn't kill me as soon as he sees me, he'll completely imprison me. If I see the almighty person who sealed me, do you think I'll still be alive? I reckon that under this guy's pursuit, I'll rush to the gold core stage. Taoist Jingru was even more astonished than Xiaohua. This wasn't a few days, nor was it a dozen days. It had already been more than a month, but Xiaohua's speed didn't show any signs of slowing down. This guy, where did he get so many spirit pills? Spirit pills. Although your Imperial Thunder sect has a lot of spirit pills, I want to see how a Foundation establishment cultivator can completely refine the medicinal power after taking so many spirit pills all at once. Even if they're all used for flight, won't the medicinal power accumulated in the meridians leave behind future troubles? Even if I can't catch up to you, do you think you can still continue to advance? Won't your cultivation be damaged? Another dozen days passed, and Taoist Jingru was still the same as before. He withdrew his secret technique and chased after Xiaohua in the direction he estimated. At this time, Xiaohua had just turned around and wanted to fly in the direction of the Dawn Rain continent. Because there were no warning signs in advance, Xiaohua didn't pay too much attention to it. He had just retracted his Buddhist sense and thought that Taoist Jingru was still chasing after him. However, after the time it took to eat a meal, the familiar divine sense that his Buddhist sense had already come into contact with swept over like a waterfall and locked onto Xiaohua all of a sudden. Xiaohua was greatly alarmed. He released his Buddhist sense and suddenly discovered that Taoist Jingru was only a dozen li away from him and was at the edge of his Buddhist sense. Looking at this young nascent soul cultivator and the sinister smile on his face, Xiaohua's soul flew out of his body and his heart jumped for no reason. He clapped his hands and sent a handful of bright flower pills into the air. Then, He immediately urged the Dragon Transformation Secret Art, the Celestial Body Filling Technique, and the Heart Sutra to refine the Earth Essence Yao Milk. Under these several methods, Xiao Hua's flying speed suddenly increased greatly. Aya, what kind of flying technique is this? Taoist Jing Ru's divine sense finally saw Xiao Hua. He saw that Xiao Hua's body was wrapped in a layer of earthy yellow spiritual energy. Moreover, there were many faint whirlpools appearing on the surface of his body, stirring up the surrounding spiritual energy and pouring it into his body. Taoist Jingru was quite astonished, especially when he saw that Xiao Hua's flying technique was actually comparable to that of a nascent soul cultivator. After all, he had previously used a secret technique and couldn't urge the flying technique to its limit. But now, he had almost pushed the flying technique to its limit. Of course, if he had used the secret technique before, Taoist Jingru would still be somewhat worried. After all, the distance between the two was more than 100 li, and his divine sense hadn't locked onto Xiao Hua. But now, it was different. Taoist Jingru didn't need to consume magic power to support the secret technique, and his divine sense had locked onto Xiao Hua. Taoist Jingru's heart had long since returned to his stomach. If he could still let Xiao Hua escape under these circumstances, then he, Taoist Jingru, would truly have no face to hang around in the cultivation world of the Dawn Rain continent. After another half a day, Taoist Jingru felt that he seemed to be a bit too optimistic. The distance between him and Xiao Hua was now about 70 li, which was within the range of his divine sense. However, in this half a day, although this distance had somewhat decreased, the decrease was really limited. Moreover, Xiao Hua's current direction was already rushing towards the Dawn Rain continent. Because of the turn just now, Taoist Jingru's flying speed slowed down slightly, and his hands formed a seal. A trace of redness appeared on Taoist Jingru's face, and a dark green sword-shaped magic weapon emerged from the top of his head. It slightly flashed in the air and unexpectedly disappeared into the void. Since you've been locked onto by this old man's divine sense, doesn't this old man have countless methods to deal with you? Taoist Jingru's face revealed a sinister smile. Xiao Hua naturally didn't dare to withdraw his Buddhist sense. Although it wasn't completely unfolded, it still extended to the left. Suddenly, a wave of ripples abruptly flashed in the space around 3M behind Xiao Hua, and then the jade-green magic treasure actually appeared out of thin air and pierced directly towards Xiao Hua's back. What kind of method is this? Xiao Hua was greatly alarmed. He already had nowhere to hide, but at this dangerous moment, Xiao Hua relied on the ethereal steps to dodge the attack. That flying sword precisely hit Xiao Hua's shoulder blade. Pong! Like the sound of metal striking stone, Xiao Hua's figure admittedly staggered a little, but his flying speed unexpectedly didn't slow down at all. In fact, he even flew a bit more because of this. What made Xiao Hua feel most at ease, and what made Taoist Jingru's eyes pop out the most was that Xiao Hua actually didn't suffer the slightest injury. Celestial infusion technique. It's really a divine technique, an ancient technique. Xiao Hua almost wanted to laugh out loud. During this month, he didn't stop cultivating the celestial infusion technique at all. This technique not only transformed the world's spiritual energy into true qi, but also gradually strengthened Xiao Hua's physical body. Taoist Jingru's hasty attack actually didn't injure Xiao Hua in the slightest. With this delay, Taoist Jingru once again pulled away from Xiao Hua. Looking at Xiao Hua's lively appearance, Taoist Jingru didn't know what to say. His flying technique was so outstanding, and his physical body was also so valiant. This kind of cultivator, if his magic power was similar to those of the same stage, then he would be a near invincible existence. If he was allowed to cultivate to nascent soul, then perhaps the order of catching up to him would completely change. So much so that he simply wouldn't have the opportunity to escape. Thinking of this, Taoist Jingru's eyes slightly narrowed, and his desire to kill Xiao Hua became even more resolute. Quick! Taoist Jingru threw a scarlet medicinal pill into his mouth. His entire physical body suddenly swelled up, and his flying figure naturally slowed down a little. Soon after, Taoist Jingru made a hand seal, and his index and middle fingers condensed together, just like a sword technique. The sword-type magic weapon that had just struck Xiao Hua, under the control of Taoist Jingru, suddenly flew up, quickly raised its head, and suddenly overtook Xiao Hua's figure, directly stabbing towards Xiao Hua's throat. Humph! Seeing the sword-type magic weapon stabbing towards him, Xiao Hua knew that Taoist Jingru wanted to use it to slow down his flight. He only needed to close the distance between them, and he would have no means to fight back. Open! Xiao Hua shouted, clenching his hand into a fist. Without the slightest hesitation, he used the Big Dipper Divine Fist on the back of the sword-type magic weapon. The Big Dipper Divine Fist was so wondrous that Xiao Hua's figure flew like moving clouds and flowing water, and his fist hit the back of the sword. The condensed earth-type spiritual energy shell on his fist blocked Xiao Hua's skin, but Taoist Jingru's heart shook, and his figure also slightly swayed. Obviously, his magic weapon had received the attack, and he also suffered some damage. Looking at Xiao Hua again, he unexpectedly borrowed the force of the attack to once again increase the distance between them. -8. Chapter 2175. Xiao Hua was determined. No matter how Taoist Jingru attacked, he only dodged and didn't fight back. He only increased the distance between them. This, Taoist Jingru was somewhat at a loss for words. He didn't dare to use spells or activate magic treasures again. If he slowed down his flying speed again, maybe Xiao Hua would really escape from the range of his divine sense. Therefore, Taoist Jingru spared no effort to fly again. It took him nearly half a day to close the distance again. Obviously, Taoist Jingru consumed more magic power to close the distance this time. It was just that this magic power was really too small. It was difficult for Taoist Jingru to detect it in his pursuit. Seeing Xiao Hua enter his attack range again, Taoist Jingru slightly hesitated. Then, he clenched his teeth and raised his hand to slap his forehead. A multicolored light blossomed from the top of his head, and a foot-long infant flew out from the top of Taoist Jingru's head. This infant had white teeth and red lips. Its facial features were exactly the same as Taoist Jingru's. Its body was covered in a small spiritual armor. The spiritual armor was faintly overflowing with brilliance, and the infant was holding a cauldron-like magic treasure in its hand. At the bottom of the magic treasure, purple true samadhi fire licked the cauldron like tongues of fire. This was the nascent soul that Taoist Jingru gave birth to. As soon as the nascent soul came out, it immediately stretched and opened its small mouth. The surrounding spiritual energy of heaven and earth rumbled and was sucked into the nascent soul's body like a hurricane. Immediately, the nascent soul's eyes flashed with malevolence. It had the same expression as Taoist Jingru. Go! Hearing Taoist Jingru's berate, his body slowed down. The nascent soul jumped with joy and waved the cauldron in its hand. Its figure turned into a stream of light and chased after Xiao Hua's back. Although the nascent soul flew very fast, it would take half a meal for it to catch up with Xiao Hua. Xiao Hua's Buddhist sense had already sensed the abnormality of the spiritual energy of heaven and earth. His complexion was deathly pale, but he had already prepared the tip of the demonic spear. The nascent soul flew to about 10 zhang behind Xiao Hua and waved its small hand. The spiritual energy of heaven and earth around Xiao Hua was sucked dry by the nascent soul. Moreover, a suffocating, imprisoning force was born in this space. It wanted to choke Xiao Hua's entire body. Rise! Magic power surged on Xiao Hua's body, and an earth-yellow brilliance surged forth. The phoenix Dharma body flew out of his body. With a GA sound, a bright light flashed through his phoenix eyes. The phoenix Dharma body actually struggled to break free from the confinement force. A cold light flashed, and its phoenix claws grabbed at Taoist Jing's nascent soul. True bloodline? The nascent soul's small mouth was also shocked, but he was not nervous. He pointed his finger, and a force was directed at the phoenix celestial body. It was like a rope, trying to bind the phoenix celestial body. Caw! The phoenix Dharma body flapped its wings with all its might and struggled to break free from the shackles. On the other hand, the nascent soul's body was also flashing with light. It was obvious that it was also consuming its magic power to cast the confinement spell. Xiao Hua, on the other hand, was fiercely struggling with his arms. While he was using his physical body to break free from the shackles, he was also repeatedly using the heaven and earth within sleeves technique. Unexpectedly, he was evenly matched with the shackles of a nascent soul cultivator. Since he saw that the shackles were ineffective, Xiao Hua immediately rushed forward and flew towards the nascent soul. The nascent soul was not afraid of Xiao Hua's counterattack at all. Seeing Xiao Hua stop, the corners of his mouth curled into a slight smile. He threw his hand, and the pill furnace immediately flew out. Samadhi True Fire, more than 100 feet long, shot out from within and pounced towards Xiao Hua. Ha ha ha! Xiao Hua laughed loudly. Under the cover of his Taoist robe, the heaven and earth within sleeves technique mixed with the Samadhi True Fire also pounced towards the pill furnace. Ah? You also know Samadhi True Fire? The nascent soul's small voice was filled with astonishment. Go to hell. It was just a simple astonishment. The nascent soul's small hand clenched, and Xiao Hua immediately felt the true essence in his body congeal. It seemed that he could not use his magic power. Good. A nascent soul cultivator's methods are indeed not simple. While Xiao Hua was praising, he raised his left hand and took out the devil hammer. Pong, pong, pong. He struck at the space. The shackles of the nascent soul were once again shaken by the devil hammer. Xiao Hua's strength had once again increased a bit under the cultivation of the celestial body bestowment technique. Devil weapon. In the distance, Taoist Jingru's speed had also slowed down a lot. He looked at the huge devil hammer in Xiao Hua's hand with some disbelief. He was very clear that devil weapons were the nemesis of Taoist cultivators. His nascent soul was also afraid of devil weapons. If this devil hammer struck the nascent soul, there would definitely be irreparable damage. Fortunately, although this guy's magic power is not bad, it still can't compare to this old man's. Admittedly, the strength of his fleshly body is valiant, but he can only barely resist this old man's magic power. Taoist Jingru was actually somewhat glad. It was far from the previous aloof attitude of a nascent soul cultivator. Instead, Taoist Jingru only rejoiced for a moment when he saw the black light unexpectedly flash in Xiao Hua's hand. A black iron needle flew out and pierced between the nascent soul's eyebrows. This black light was extremely fast, scaring the nascent soul into a slight daze. He hastily waved his hand and used a spell to block the black iron needle. However, this black iron needle was covered by Xiao Hua's concealment. Taking advantage of the nascent soul's distraction, Xiao Hua's figure suddenly sped up. His originally empty left hand suddenly flashed with the tip of a devil spear. It swiftly pierced towards the nascent soul's body. This devil spear tip had yet to reach the body when Taoist Jingru's nascent soul immediately gave birth to a chill. Almost without thinking, the nascent soul's figure suddenly swayed and unexpectedly disappeared into thin air. When it reappeared, it was already several zhang away, leaping high out of the range of Xiao Hua's devil spear tip. This was precisely the nascent soul's special teleportation technique. What kind of strange devil tool is this? Taoist Jingru was greatly shocked. His previous rejoicing had long since disappeared. It seems this old man has a feeling that if this devil spear tip brushes against my nascent soul will be absorbed by this devil spear tip. Damn it, what kind of strange cultivator is this Xiao Hua? You're not cultivating your heaven-reaching Tao sect cultivation. What kind of strange thing are you doing? At this moment, Taoist Jingru almost wanted to teach Xiao Hua a lesson. Xiao Hua, this kind of cultivator who refined his body to a certain degree, was precisely the nemesis of nascent souls. Taoist Jingru was only at the early nascent soul stage and had yet to condense his nascent soul. If his nascent soul was slightly touched, it was possible that he would lose several decades or even several hundred years of cultivation before he could recover. If he wasn't careful, there would really be the danger of being destroyed. Taoist Jingru saw that Xiao Hua was a foundation establishment cultivator, so he released his nascent soul. He wanted to use his nascent soul to catch up to Xiao Hua, But when he released his nascent soul, he was also hesitant because he was afraid of the current situation. However, Taoist Jingru wasn't too afraid. After all, Xiao Hua's cultivation was too far apart, and his nascent soul still had too many divine abilities that it hadn't used. Therefore, Taoist Jingru's nascent soul leaped high into the sky and immediately pointed its hand. The pill furnace surrounded by Xiao Hua's true samadhi fire suddenly expanded, and an enormous suction force was born from that pill furnace. Not only did it cover Xiao Hua's phoenix dharma body, it even sucked Xiao Hua inside. -8.